I'm back again, and now on to ranking Season 3 of The Simpsons. So, here we go again. So, here we have the only Simpsons episode to be banned from streaming services and DVD release as of 2019. And honestly, whether you believe Michael Jackson to be guilty or not, I don't think the episode should be swept under the rug, especially when A Bug's Life is on Disney+, and we all know who voiced the villain in that movie. But looking at the quality of the episode, yeah, it's a great one. It has hilarious moments throughout, but also a certain amount of poignancy, and it brings its two plotlines about Homer quote-unquote meeting Michael Jackson and Bart forgetting Lisa's birthday together, in which quote-unquote Michael helps Bart write a song for Lisa, which genuinely slaps. This is a funny episode. Lisa's determination to tell the truth is particularly admirable, and the episode has a lot of really funny moments, the best ones being the taxi mix-up, Homer and Bart enjoying the perks of the expenses paid, and Bart riding in the cockpit. Another really good episode. An episode that shows that even though Homer acts like he resents Ned, he does secretly ultimately care about him, going from wishing for his store to be closed to actively seeking people to go to it. A really funny and heartwarming episode overall. While I do think it takes slightly too long to get into the main plot, I do like this episode overall. Joe Mantegna makes his first appearance as Fat Tony, and certainly brings a sense of comedic threat. A detail that stood out to me on my most recent rewatch was how Principal Skinner advises Bart to make a game out of licking envelopes, which foreshadows the way he stayed sane while trapped under newspapers. A very nice connection. We get an amusing A-plot in which Homer saves the plant by luck, only to wonder if he really is a hero, which comes to a funny ending. We also get a good B-plot about Bart and Milhouse, which comes to a heartwarming end where Marge defends Bart, prompting Milhouse's mum Luann to let them play together again. Two good plotlines in an overall good episode. It's a good episode that humanises Krusty and establishes his backstory, including his complicated relationship with his father, which does come to an emotionally gripping conclusion in the end. The episode also manages to have a lot of funny moments, particularly Krusty trying to be serious, but the spotlight not doing any favours. Both a funny and heartwarming episode. It's the second Treehouse of Horror, and this one is an improvement on the first. I like the way the segments all tie together, and they all have really good jokes in them. Lisa's nightmare features some really funny moments, the standouts being Maggie making a wish that seems like it's for a limo, only for it to simply be a delivery for a new dummy, and the ending in which Homer wishes for a turkey sandwich, which turns out to be a little dry, and gives the paw to Ned, who gets rid of the aliens and becomes celebrated. I also like the idea that everyone becomes tired of seeing The Simpsons everywhere, which seems like a subtle allegory for how big The Simpsons was at the time. Bart's nightmare is also very funny, with the highlights being Edna changing the answers in the test to accommodate Bart's, and the reconciliation between Homer and Bart at the end being the thing that woke Bart up from his quote-unquote nightmare. Homer's nightmare, while not as funny, is an entertaining story, with the twist about Burns' head really being stitched to Homer's neck being very funny. It seems as though the Treehouse of Horror episodes are upping themselves at this point. We'll see if this continues in the Season 4 ranking. A funny and poignant episode that shows Homer try to be a good father to Lisa, with her realising just how far he's willing to go for her to keep a pony. It also manages to work in a really funny Godfather reference. It's not one of my favourite episodes, but still, there goes a good episode from one of the best seasons The Simpsons ever had. A funny episode that gives Homer a good character arc in realising he needs to support Bart, even if Bart didn't choose his go-kart to race in. It also has a good Ben-Hur reference in it. Flaming Moe's has a lot of great elements to it. The setup surrounding the titular drink, and how Homer invented it, is both creative and funny. And the episode features a lot of great moments from here, including Edna drunkenly stealing the drumsticks, Homer's sarcastic, happy monologue, Homer being too upset to eat and going to Moe's, Bart's botched, huge ass prank call, and Homer's manic monologue about the secret ingredient. The Flaming Moe's song is quite nice to listen to, and I like Moe's arc in the episode. While he is quite selfish, he does eventually come to acknowledge the drink as Homer's invention in the end, serving him one free of charge. Great episode. Other than the fantastic Land of Chocolate fantasy, the episode is never hilarious, though it does have good jokes, such as the one about Lenny's smile. And I do like Mr. Burns' arc of buying back the plant upon realising his former employees no longer fear him. It's far from the best of the show, but it is a good episode overall. A very funny and heartwarming episode. It not only manages to have a lot of funny moments, including Homer's reaction to Smithers' questions at the job interview, and when he accidentally spoils the ending of The Empire Strikes Back, but it also shows how dedicated Homer is to providing for Marge and Bart, with the poor view from The Way We Was coming back. A great episode overall. Radio Bart is a great episode that has hilarious moments throughout, including, but certainly not limited to, Bart's free birthday sundae, the Neapolitan ice cream scene, and several of Bart's microphone pranks. I also think the episode's commentary on people trying to profit off tragic stories is well handled, with the town trying to profit off what is seemingly an awful event. And yeah, it's just a great episode overall. While I do wish the B-plot with Marge and Bart had more to it, I do like the A-plot, and Homer's arc of putting Lisa's love for him before money. The episode is also home to good jokes, particularly people skipping church to watch the game, with one of the few attendees leaving when being reminded of it. This is a good episode. While it's not particularly funny, it is satisfying to see Marge take a break from the stress of looking after her family. Bart the Lover is an episode that shows just how well The Simpsons can balance comedy and poignancy. The plotline about Bart tricking Edna into thinking a man loves her starts off as a cruel prank, but it then turns into a beautiful closure in which Bart works with his family to write a final letter that makes her continue to feel loved. If I were to mention how good the recurring voice actors were all the time, I'd probably repeat myself a lot, but I will point out two specific vocal performances in this episode that stand out. One is the late great Marcia Wallace's Edna, who shows the depression and loneliness that plagues the character, and earned a much deserved Emmy for her performance. The other is Dan Castellaneta, who was always fantastic as Homer, and in this episode really shows the comedic anger he endures trying to build a dog kennel. And on that note, the side plot in which Homer tries to cut back on swearing is frequently hilarious, though Ned Flanders without a moustache looks slightly uncanny. Ugh. A fantastic episode, and one of the best of Season 3. The first episode to beat The Cosby Show in the ratings, Homer at the Bat is a classic episode, with constant hilarious moments and memorable celebrity cameos. Unlike a lot of modern episodes where the celebrity cameos are shoved down our throats, these cameos were actually worked into the story, with Mr. Burns hiring real-life softball players to play for his team. What truly makes the episode great in my opinion is Homer's ambition to play with his magic bat, as well as how he wins the game at the end, which I won't spoil, and also how the softball players end up dropping out, with incidents including Ken Griffey Jr. developing gigantism, and Joe Canseco saving a woman's possessions from a burning building, individually. A classic episode with a great amount of humour. I like how this episode puts Bart and Lisa in opposite situations, Bart bringing orders to the school, and Lisa rebelling. The twist about the teachers requiring books for answers, and then stressing when the books are stolen, is very funny. And it has a heartwarming ending, in which Bart sacrifices his credibility to prevent Lisa getting expelled, and she consoles him by resuming playing her saxophone. Really good episode. This episode is home to a lot of funny moments, including the fantasy of King Homer, and Homer not knowing Lisa's birthday. But the standouts are Kent Brockman winning the lottery, and the Clockwork Orange reference, and the flip side to it. Even if the family's treatment of Santa's little helper is a bit too mean-spirited, considering the twisted stomach wasn't his fault, the episode does end on a heartwarming reconciliation between him and Bart. While Homer is unnecessarily hostile at the beginning, the rest of the episode is pretty great, with one of my favourite jokes being Homer having to drive past miles of awful smells. And it's the show's introduction to Lurleen Lumpkin, who is a sympathetic character, seeking to launch a singing career, but also hoping to become Homer's lover, mostly due to him being one of, if not the first, men to show respect for her. Homer's conflict about remaining Lurleen's manager, even when tension rises and it puts his marriage on thin ice, is a well-executed one. And his decision to quit and return to Marge is a heartwarming one, and one that Lurleen, through a new song, reluctantly accepts. And on that topic, Lurleen's songs are all fantastic, two of which were written by her voice actress Beverly D'Angelo, whose voice performance and singing are superb. Kelsey Grammer returns as Sideshow Bob, and does a great job conveying his comedic insanity. And overall, it is a frequently hilarious episode, with some of my favourite moments being Sideshow Bob and Krusty's argument at the Emmys, the former's sarcasm about MacGyver being good, Bart trying to explain the problem to Homer before succeeding in explaining it to Marge, and the way Chief Wiggum inadvertently catches Bob at the end. A really funny episode, and a great second chapter in Sideshow Bob's character arc. This is a good episode. It has several funny moments, such as Homer telling Bart to give up if something's too hard, as well as Lisa mentioning the school bus not having seatbelts, and also accidentally killing Spinal Tap. Don't have much more to say, but I like it. Bart's Friend Falls in Love has one of the best openings in the entire series. A parody of Raiders of the Lost Ark, Bart steals Homer's change and has to escape as Homer chases him down, culminating in Bart escaping on the bus and Homer yelling gibberish with the rake. Possibly the best cultural reference in the series. And yet, the rest of the episode doesn't feel connected to it, or even live up to it. It's a good episode, and there are other funny jokes in it, such as Milhouse's quote about Romeo and Juliet, but nothing lives up to the brilliance of the opening, and that is a shame. An improvement on Oh Brother Where Art Thou. While Homer does still get a lot of unnecessary flack from Herb, the episode does come to a more satisfying end, where Herb, finally, oversees the invention himself, regains his fortune, and reconciles with his brother. It also has a lot of funny moments, with Homer's award show being a funny parody of award shows, along with Homer in the vibrating chair providing a great 2001 A Space Odyssey reference, and some very funny translations on the baby translator. A really good episode overall. An even better season than the last two. I guess we'll see if Season 4 continues to improve an already great series. Starts the season on a high note, with lots of memorable funny scenes, including Bart and Lisa trying to get the report cards changed, Milhouse's question for Mr. Black, Krusty dismissing the dangerous objects with his name on them, Barney blowing his Krusty disguise, and how Lisa senses the real Krusty, and overall makes for a really good start to the season. Both plotlines in this episode manage to be hilarious and go hand in hand. The plotline about Maggie trying to get her and the other baby's dummies back at the daycare, a la The Great Escape, is hilarious, but the main plot point about Marge is even better. I think one of my favourite parts of the episode is that while Homer does seem indifferent to Marge acting in the play, he not only pays attention to it when seeing it, but also manages to grasp how dark and depressing the story is, even with the upbeat songs of the musical adaptation, which are fantastic songs by the way. A frequently funny episode, with the standout moments being Homer making moon waffles, his reaction to finding a penny under the couch, and his flashback of playing in the beer rain, and the entire scene in which Ned tries to save him from the fire. It also has a nice ending message about how different religions can come together to help each other. Great episode. Both hilarious and emotionally gripping, with Homer's devotion to make Lisa feel better being admirable, in addition to having various hilarious scenes, including the Disney lawsuit, Barney crushing the Duff Blimp, and the way Lisa is stripped of her Little Miss Springfield crown at the end.
In the area under "Do not write in this space," he wrote...
Great episode. Yep, this Treehouse of Horror improves on the last two, with all the segments being hilarious. Clown Without Pity features many iconic moments, such as Homer buying the Krusty doll, Grandpa's correct but dramatic statement about the doll being evil, Patty's response to seeing Homer naked, and most especially, the twist ending. King Homer manages to be a frequently funny parody of King Kong, even for someone who hasn't seen the film, with some of the best jokes including Smithers' comment about Marge joining the crew, Burns getting high on gas, and the scene with Shirley Temple. Dial Z for Zombies features many great moments, with the best including Groundskeeper Willie only briefly reacting with horror to the zombies, Homer being rejected by the zombies due to them seeking brains, and him taking the opportunity to shoot Ned, not realising he was a zombie. 3 great segments combined into a great episode. This is a great episode that showcases Bart and Homer's relationship, and a heartwarming message to it. It also manages to have a lot of hilarious moments, particularly the Star Trek parody, Bart messing around with Grandpa's teeth, Homer pushing in front for the ice cream truck, and his conversation with Bart afterwards, the Itchy and Scratchy World War II cartoon, Maggie driving Homer's car, and Wiggum's casual reaction to it, the man falling down the bridge as it opens, and the opening scene of the Itchy and Scratchy movie, and how much Itchy goes through just to run over Scratchy. I watched this episode several times as a kid, and I used to think it was interesting how the film featured skits of Itchy killing Scratchy that couldn't be shown on TV, which I thought was symbolic of how Bart, and the audience, never get to see any of the movie other than the opening scene. I don't know if this was intentional on the writer's part, but it interested me nonetheless. While Mr. Burns falling in love with Marge in this episode is strange, given that they've met several times before, the episode is nonetheless home to good jokes, with Smithers' fantasy about Mr. Burns being the standout joke. I also like Homer standing up for Marge at the end. Good episode. The 2 plotlines of this episode, Bart falling in love with Laura, and Homer eating at the seafood restaurant, manage to go hand in hand, with both having funny moments throughout, particularly Bart admitting he fell on his bottom, Homer remembering how he learned about sex, the reference to the seemingly never-ending story, the bags of shrimp actually being letters in another trial, and Bart's prank calls to Moe, and Moe's reaction to Bart giving his address. I just hope Moe eventually finds Amanda hug and kiss, provided his standards aren't too high. While not one of the funniest episodes, the episode is nonetheless home to good moments, particularly Homer pretending Moe's is a pornography store, Homer saying he'd never do another stupid thing, the terrible Mr. Plow advert, and Adam West's cameo. I also like how it further explores the friendship between Homer and Barney, and gives both of them good character arcs. Not one of the best episodes of the season, but a good one nonetheless. This episode is home to funny moments, particularly Bart flushing Homer's wallet down the toilet, though it's not frequently hilarious like other episodes. The ending is very poignant, however, and I like how the episode explores the first words of all the Simpsons children. A darkly hilarious episode, which is home to many great moments, particularly the bad cop segment, Homer's initial indifference to his heart, Mr. Burns inadvertently killing him, and one of Dr. Nick's failed patients. Well, at least in the case of Homer's heart surgery, Dr. Nick pulled a Homer. Though not widely praised among the cast and crew of the show, Marge vs. the Monroe managed to be a really funny, intelligent episode. While I did previously say that I've never seen The Simpsons as that realistic in its style of comedy, there is definitely some sense of realism to it. Yet, I don't think this episode quite crosses the line in terms of silliness. Except maybe Leonard Nimoy's exit at the end. The episode features a number of hilarious moments, including the Flintstones-themed opening, the popcorn rising when a truck falls through a hole, Homer believing Batman will help him, etc. The episode also has that amount of comedic suspense in the monorail not being able to stop, and guest star Leonard Nimoy's overly dramatic response to the events happening, including the solar eclipse. Plus, who can forget the monorail song? Mono, don't! This episode has a variety of hilarious moments, especially concerning Homer eating the spoiled sandwich, and Bart and Lisa's antics at Duff Gardens, with Lisa's hallucination, like Dumbo, having creative visuals, but also, unlike Dumbo, actually being relevant to the plot, funny, and not overlong. It also manages to give Selma a compelling arc of wanting a child to avoid dying alone, but eventually seeing the difficulty of it, and instead raising Jub Jub. With this said, the Duff Beer For Me song was stuck in my head after I watched the episode, and I think it's going to get stuck back in my head as I'm talking about it. Oh shit. Duff beer for me, Duff beer for you, I'll have a Duff, you have one too. Please forgive my terrible singing. The most hilarious part of this episode is the fight between Homer and Tom at the end, especially Homer's hatred of antiques, and when he falls on the fire hydrant at the end. But, as to not undermine how great the episode is, it manages to show the complicated relationship between Homer and Bart, which manages to have an emotionally gripping outcome, even if somewhat predictable. I Love Lisa manages to be both a very funny and poignant episode. It's great to see an episode about Ralph, and how he struggles to comprehend Lisa not liking him, and when his heart is broken, he vents this frustration into a compelling portrayal of George Washington. It shows a different side to Ralph, and how, despite being the dumbest character on the show, there is talent within him. And his platonic reconciliation with Lisa at the end is very heartwarming. It also, as you'd expect from classic Simpsons, manages to have a lot of hilarious moments, including Homer forgetting Valentine's Day and his scene with Apu, Skinner's Vietnam flashback, Krusty's anniversary special, Homer getting Ralph to clean the roof, Wiggum revealing how he got tickets, and the presidential play. A great episode from a great season. This episode does have a lot of really good moments, including Homer trying to hide going to the Duff Brewery, and trying to slam the door on Barney until he agrees to let him drive, Lisa's hamster project, and Homer trying to avoid thinking about beer. And the ending of Homer continuing to avoid drinking to go on a bicycle ride with Marge is very heartwarming. With that said, the side plot about Bart destroying Lisa's tomato feels too mean-spirited, and it rubs me the wrong way to see Bart win in the end. Yeah, Lisa turned Bart into an experiment, but he kind of deserved it. In spite of this, Duffless is a really good episode overall. I've always loved this episode. While I previously named it my third favourite Simpsons episode, upon rewatch, this may end up being my favourite of the entire series. There's not a single joke in this episode I didn't think was fantastic. From the McBain opening to the ending with the laughing gas, there's never a dull moment, and it's hard to single out particular jokes or moments as a result. As can be said for many classic Simpsons references, the references to The Godfather Part 2, Yellow Submarine, and Batman are all hilarious. and they work in the context of the story if you're not familiar with the reference. And the episode has an ending which manages to be both funny and touching. Burns causing a power outage, but the workers not losing hope. And with Burns' hilarious Grinch-like observation, it makes it an even funnier situation. A frequently hilarious, and when it wants to be, touching episode, and one of, if not the best in the series. The first half of the episode has many funny moments, primarily in Homer and Bart trying to prank each other on April Fool's Day. The second half does overuse clips slightly, but their incorporation is decent overall. Both plotlines in this episode have a lot of really funny moments. The standouts for each being Homer's revelation to Marge that he never graduated, and Bart and Lisa's rock paper scissors game. I also think the minute-long segment with Ned Flanders at the end is funny, even if it is a shame they never made more, ironically for the opposite reason the segment was created. I can definitely name some episodes that could have used them. Another Simpsons clip show. Another really good episode. I like how Lisa's hatred of Whacking Day and Bart's interest in learning end up going hand in hand to save the snakes. I especially love how the setup of Skinner trying to lock Bart and the bullies in the basement, and forgetting about the bullies, leads to him really trying to get them the mountain bikes, only for him and Willie to drive past the school. Honestly, my favourite part of the episode. While the stuff with Marge in prison feels slightly rushed, the episode is nonetheless home to a lot of really funny moments. The standouts being the stuff with the juice loosener, as well as Lionel Hutz trying to remove his tie to make Apu think he could really forget something, and be wrong about Marge. Another really good episode overall. Krusty Gets Cancelled is both very funny and emotionally gripping. Krusty trying to stay on the air has a lot of great moments, but the highlight is when he airs Worker and Parasite, which he doesn't even watch before airing. And Dan Castellaneta's absolutely perfect delivery of,
"What the hell was that?"
absolutely phenomenal. But Krusty's comeback special also manages to be both quite emotionally gripping and funny. And while Julie Kavner and Harry Shearer objected to the celebrity guest appearances, with Kavner not even appearing in the episode, I think they worked quite well here. Much better than they do in a lot of modern Simpsons episodes. The Simpsons have struck gold again, and even more so than the previous seasons. At this point, if Season 5 is even slightly weaker, don't want to say worse because that implies it'll be bad, it could be a sign of decline. But hopefully, and most likely, that won't be the case. A great start to the season. The episode is home to many great moments, including Homer ignoring valuable items for just 5 cents, the way he gets rid of Wiggum, the auditions for Wiggum's replacement, Marge trying to compensate for Homer's absence, and George Harrison's cameo. The song Baby on Board is really good, and the final rooftop performance is fantastic. And speaking of Beatles references, they work really well, even if you're, somehow, not familiar with the band. Can't wait to see what's next. Years ago, I named Cape Fear my favourite Simpsons episode, and upon revisiting the episodes for this series, while I wouldn't necessarily consider it the best, it's still pretty great. The episode is home to many hilarious moments, while balancing it out with a sense of comedic tension in Sideshow Bob trying to kill Bart. Of course, there's the iconic fun fact, they paid Kelsey Grammer to do the noise once, then multiplied it up on the soundtrack. Cheap bastards. But there's also Bob's Die Bart Die tattoo, Homer's failure to catch on to
"Hello, Mr. Thompson."
"I think he's talking to you."
the family driving through the cactus patch, Bob getting trampled by the marching band and elephants, Homer's
"You chainsaw Huggy Mask!"
and Wiggum mixing up his message to Lou and Eddie. We also have Kelsey Grammer voicing Sideshow Bob for the 3rd time, and he's still fantastic, with his performance of the HMS Pinafore being a highlight. While I won't necessarily name it the best episode, it should be very, very high up on the final ranking. Phenomenal episode. While I can't say I'm a fan of Homer spiking the punch, it does at least lead to this brilliant joke.
"Attention, everyone! The punch has been spiked! Don't worry, your parents have been called and will be here to pick you up shortly!"
I love how there are 2 separate implications to this. 1, they called all the parents within seconds. 2, they didn't mention the punch had been spiked until after they'd called all the parents. And besides this, Homer Goes to College is a really good episode overall. There are many other great moments in this episode, with the best being Homer's inability to guard a bee, and getting bit on the bottom, Homer somehow believing he's a jock, his reaction to the professor dropping his notes, the children's hospital not being built because 6 cinder blocks were swiped, Homer causing the accident at college and calling Dean a stupid head, the Itchy and Scratchy cartoon, and Homer trying to cram in revision for the exam, plus his hilarious little victory dance. When one of the weakest episodes of the season is still a really good one, you know you've struck gold. While Mr. Burns is an evil arsehole, this episode shows a human side to him in his regret over leaving behind Bobo as a kid, aka his Rosebud, this being one of several great homages to Citizen Kane. The episode also shows Homer's devotion to Maggie, in how he rejects a huge sum of fortune from Mr. Burns for the sake of her happiness and her love for Bobo. And it's home to many hilarious moments, including the simple yet hilarious reference to Barney the dinosaur, Homer mocking Mr. Burns at his birthday, Frank's failed bear robot, Homer wanting a recording studio, Burns taking over all TV channels, and providing his own content, and him and Smithers trying twice to steal back Bobo, but failing. Both a hilarious and emotionally gripping episode. Another strong treehouse of horror. The first segment is frequently funny, with the standout jokes being Homer's emergency donut, Burns seeing Ned as the devil, the ironic punishment, Homer and Marge marrying in an emergency room, and Homer's donut head. Overall, I do genuinely believe that Homer would canonically sell his soul for a donut. The Gremlin story is also frequently funny, particularly Otto hitting Hans Moleman's gremlin, Jimbo putting the torches in Martin's shorts, and Bart taking one, but putting the other back, and when Ned takes care of the gremlin at the end. Let's just say that doesn't end well, for Ned or Bart. The vampire story is probably the best segment, with the standout moments being Homer's casualty towards the clues of Mr. Burns being a vampire, and when he kills him at the end, only for Burns to briefly come back to life and fire him, as if that's gonna make any difference. Another home run for the Treehouse of Horrors, and the golden age of The Simpsons for that matter. This is a good episode. The funniest moment in the episode would be when Homer gets his arms stuck in the vending machine, which not only features him fantasizing about an upside to having them on his arms forever, but also features the revelation that he was only stuck because he was holding onto the cans. The other funniest moments are Wiggum thinking Ruth's car is a ghost car when the headlights go out, and Bart trying to trick Homer with the opposite note. While it's not as hilarious as most other Season 5 episodes, it's still a good episode. This is a frequently funny episode. The setup with the trampoline, the setup with the trampoline is home to many great moments, especially how Homer intends to expand on it, which definitely seems to be an idea that will never work in real life.
No, it doesn't.
Which leads into the hilarious main storyline about everyone believing they should act like Bart, and it all leading to chaos, all while Bart himself becomes frustrated with it. And Albert Brooks shines in his third guest appearance too. A frequently funny episode. The setup with the Super Squishy is hilarious, and Bart joining the junior campers, and what it leads to, managed to be great as well. Some of the best moments in the episode include Homer losing the $20 when slipping on the peanut he lost, Apu trying to make the all-syrup Super Squishy, Bart firing back at Nelson when reminding him of the test, and Homer and Bart failing to refuse each other's end of the situation, Bart not wanting Homer to go with him, and Homer not wanting to go with him. With all this said, I can't help but question how Homer ate 700 Krusty Burgers and lived to tell the tale. Honestly, what hasn't this man survived? While it is another episode in which an obstacle is placed between Homer and Marge's marriage, this one manages to bring something new, with Homer receiving a new female colleague with whom he shares a mutual attraction, but also has a ton in common with. It has a great build-up, and a predictable, yet heartwarming ending. It also has a lot of hilarious moments in both plotlines, particularly Bart painting the parking lines too close, the power plant's painted on fire exit, Homer and Mindy's first full conversation, the scene with Joey Jojo Jr. Shabadoo.
That's the worst name I ever heard.
Homer trying to
The
the man with the giant hand, the fortune cookie barrels, and the creepy bellboy getting punched. I have to put this one high on the Season 5 ranking. My brain told me so. This is a good episode with a lot of funny moments, particularly Burns losing sleep, and Barney accidentally drinking quarters and burping them. With that said, the plotline about the family struggling without Marge has been done twice before. A somewhat derivative, but ultimately good episode overall. This is a frequently funny episode. While it has many hilarious moments throughout, the third act is my favourite part, particularly when they try to dig for the treasure, only to get trapped, and then come up with absurd ways to get out the hole. Great episode. This is a great episode throughout. The setup with the box factory and how hilariously tedious and empty the experience is just brilliant. This manages to lead into the main plot about Bart becoming Krusty's assistant, only to accidentally destroy Seth and say,
I didn't do it.
leading to him temporarily becoming a celebrity, which manages to be a funny commentary on how unimaginative media becomes popular, either temporarily or for very long periods of time. It also manages to have many hilarious moments outside of the setup or satirical commentary. A notable one being when Kent refuses to read the news due to Bart stealing his Danish cookie, only for Bumblebee Man to quickly replace him and read the news in such a hilarious way.
A powerful tidal wave in Kuala Lumpur has killed 120 people.
Hey, Chihuahua! Whoa, whoa, whoa!
Anyhow, this is a great episode, and if any of you disagree with the opinion I voiced, I didn't do it. The first episode to give Apu a major role, and also gives him a compelling character arc. It features a lot of great jokes, but many are packed into the entire plot point of Homer wearing the camera within the huge hat. Homer being so cool in describing his refusal to wear a wire, the fact that he's willing to wear a hidden camera and microphone, the van saying ordinary van, Kent having Homer wear an oversized novelty hat, the fact that a tiny camera somehow requires an oversized hat, Kent explaining he needs to be in and out in 10 minutes or he'll suffer permanent neck damage, the aftermath of someone not complying with this instruction, Homer struggling to walk into the Quickie Mart, Homer believing a bee is in the hat, stepping on it and running out.
Homer, that hat's been with the station for 20 years. He had 1 day left till retirement.
Which creates two jokes. One being the way Kent talks about it like a human, and the fact that they came up with the camera just now, yet it had somehow been around for 20 years. Apu stating his intention to sell a dirty wiener out loud, him saying it to the smashed hat, and, the highlight of it all, Homer going back into the Quickie Mart in seconds, even after he saw the footage, and eating the hot dog in 2 seconds. That's 16 jokes in less than 2 minutes, equivalent to more than 8 jokes in a minute. Just an example of the magic behind the comedy in classic Simpsons. The only way it could have been funnier is if they showed the ambulance van again. Rule of 3, right? The episode also features a guest appearance from James Woods, and whether you like him as a person or not, he has proven himself to be a great voice actor, not just through voicing Hades in Hercules, but also through his appearance in this episode of The Simpsons. He manages to have his fair share of funny line deliveries, but his guest appearance also works in the context of the story, establishing that he becomes the manager of the Quickie Mart to research a role in a film. This also makes James Woods one of the few voice actors to voice himself on both The Simpsons and Family Guy. Who Needs the Quickie Mart is also a great song, even if Apu lied to us through song. I hate when people do that. But ultimately, who needs this episode? Okay, that's the wrong episode, but it works, so I'll allow it. Another episode with a lot of great jokes, many of which stem from Grandpa's side plot about trying to relive his youth, and working at Krusty Burger. I also have to give mention to Smithers helping Lisa reach Malibu Stacy, and the automated message from Mr. Burns on his computer.
We probably should ignore that.
The episode also serves as an insightful commentary on how companies can easily influence people to buy their products, even with minimal effort. Remains very relevant today with the lack of new ideas in both toy companies and film companies. The idea of Homer Simpson of all people going into space sounds ridiculous, but also like it should take advantage of its space theme. And it does, while also having a reason that makes sense. It also brings constant hilarious moments, and references to films such as 2001: A Space Odyssey and Planet of the Apes, and a number of great lines, such as,
For the duration of the training, there'll be no more beer.
What? 3 whole weeks with only wine?
They even managed to get Buzz Aldrin to guest star, joining Homer on the shuttle. The episode even features a hilarious climax, primarily Kent Brockman believing the ants are aliens invading Earth, and Homer using an inanimate carbon rod to shut the doors to the shuttle, with the public only acknowledging the rod.
It's an inanimate fucking object.
You're an inanimate fucking object!
Even before the space stuff, we get hilarious jokes as well, primarily Bart writing on the back of Homer's skull, and Homer thinking TV respects him. My, does that backfire.
You stupid!
Another brilliant, memorable episode with some of the show's best jokes. This episode has a lot of good moments. The standouts being Homer chasing the Flanders family a la Terminator 2, the Nacho hat, and Will, the rapping Ronnie Reagan tape. Where I don't like it quite as much is how the third act feels too mean-spirited towards Ned, and how everyone gets outraged at him because he, for once, loses his temper. But it is still a good episode overall. Bart choosing an elephant over $10,000 is a bit far-fetched, but otherwise the episode is great. As well as being home to many hilarious moments, particularly Homer trying to clean the basement, the Sound of Music reference, I can only imagine they were waiting for the perfect moment to make that reference, and Barney's nonchalant reaction to catching fire. It also manages to convey an intriguing anti-animal abuse message. If I had a nickel for every time a Season 5 Simpsons episode humanised Mr. Burns, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right? On that note, Burns' Error is another banger of an episode, and it does a good job of continuing to humanise Mr. Burns. This time, it focuses on his desire to find someone to leave his fortune to. Of course though, this is Mr. Burns, and his manipulative evil side is also on display in how he tricks Bart into believing his family don't want him back, and trying to force him to fire Homer. It also manages to be frequently funny, with moments such as Burns' life flashing before his eyes, the auditions to be Burns' heir, Burns trying to play cricket with Bart, the mix-up with Hans Moorman, and the bad performance by the actors hired by Burns to play Homer, Marge and Lisa. When you can't get Michael Caine to guest star in one episode, have Dan Castellaneta voice him in another one. It also gives Bart an interesting arc of learning to value family and friends over wealth. Another great episode. Well, we're 100 episodes in, and this one, while not as funny as other episodes, does still have a lot of funny moments, including when Groundskeeper Willie chases Santa's little helper through the vent, Ned Flanders becoming principal, and Apu shunning Skinner's Jurassic Park ripoff. It also brings depth to the relationship between Bart and Skinner, when the former feels bad about getting the latter fired, and tries to help get him rehired, while starting a poignant friendship between the two, even if things had to unfortunately reset with Skinner being rehired. While it is a bit of a shame that Bart and Skinner go back to disliking each other so soon, this episode manages to have a simultaneously comedic and threatening chase montage of Skinner pursuing Bart when the latter plays truant. Skinner is definitely a non-giving-up school guy. The episode has various other memorable moments, like Lisa laughing at Skinner and Willie, the waiter's hilarious clumsiness, and of course, Homer's various actions and thoughts on jury duty, including the disguise glasses, and the iconic
Yum 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 yum.
The episode also provides intriguing satire of nepotism and bribery, in how Mayor Quimby tries to bribe people to say his nephew was nowhere near the Quimby compound, only for it to backfire due to Freddy's entitlement and anger management problem. A great episode overall. Some of my favourite moments in this episode include Homer ruining Magaggi's birthday cake, Grandpa confusing love with a stroke, and the ending reference to The Graduate. While it's not as funny as the other episodes this season, it's still a good episode overall. This episode manages to have a lot of great moments, some standouts being Homer playing poker, Moe's flunk dancing class, the discussion of the orange eating class, and the scene where Homer tries to win Marge back by echoing memories. Don't have much more to say other than it being a great episode, except for Homer teasing the order box at Krusty Burger, the naughty naughty. The Simpsons is still continuing to improve. Looking at the season as a whole, best one yet. Roll on the Season 6 ranking. Hello everyone. This is a newer and smaller series, where I cover fan theories based on films and TV shows. This will see me talking about what the theory is about, weighing up evidence to support or debunk it, and whether or not I believe the theory to be credible. As I am working on a lot of ideas for bigger videos, these videos will be made to allow me to get out more content in between. So, let's start with a popular and very interesting theory. This theory surrounds Jessie's owner Emily in Toy Story 2, stating that she is Andy's mum. The theory has some believability, claiming that when Emily grew up, she gave Jessie to charity, but held onto the hat, and later gave it to Andy. It would explain why Andy's hat is the same colour as Jessie's and not Woody's. The red lining is stated to be the worn-out former white lining, due to the hat being old by the time Emily gave it to her son. In addition, Emily's last name, much like Andy's mum's first name, are never revealed. She may well be Emily Davis. Some people have asked the question as to why Andy's mum wouldn't recognise Jessie when she saw her, but I think that can be overlooked as her just assuming it's another doll of Jessie. The bigger question for me though, would be, why doesn't she question Jessie and Bullseye's presents, considering that she didn't buy them for Andy? Unfortunately, however, I have found a hole in this theory. While Emily's childhood hat is round like Jessie's, Andy's childhood hat is teardrop shaped. I'm going to have to say no on this one, but it is still an interesting theory. Welcome back to Credible or Not. In this video, we'll be covering a rather dark theory surrounding Willy Wonka. specifically in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. The theory surrounds Wonka being a serial killer, suggesting that he snapped years ago, and invites the children to his factory, intent on luring them into his various contraptions, and that with Charlie being the winner, Wonka will train him to kill more kids in the future. So, let's look at the evidence to back this theory up. Wonka's casual response to the kids falling into his contraptions is hard to ignore. From casually telling Augustus's mother where the pipe goes to calling Veruca a bad egg after she falls down the chute, Wonka is certainly one to show some, admittedly, rather humorous nonchalance about it. The Oompa Loompas are always ready with a death song, showing no concern for the kids' safety, and simply singing about how they would go far if they had proper discipline. Which is true, but probably not the thing you should be focusing on at that very moment. Lessons on parenting can come later, Oompa Loompas, the kids are in danger. A further example of Wonka's unnerving side is the very existence of the scary tunnel. The guests should have done like their How It Should Have Ended counterparts and left right there. Speaking of the scary tunnel, why does the Wonkatania only have enough seats for Wonka and all the remaining guests? And the same for the Wonkamobile. Some chocolate for thought. That, and unlike Tim Burton's version, we don't see the kids leaving the factory. Wonka telling Charlie they'd be fine may well be a cover-up. The theory goes as far as to state that Wonka uses the kids' body parts as a secret ingredient in his sweets. It would definitely explain where Sultan and Freeburg got the idea for that fucked up parody of Wonka. Oh, sorry, I meant Willy. Is there anything to debunk this theory? Honestly, no. Everything makes complete sense about it.
You terrible man!
I'd certainly be cautious about going to this factory if it existed in real life. I'd probably rather go to the crack den that was Willy's chocolate experience. Oompa Loompa Doompa Dee Dun. I'm going to have to say yes to this one. I'd probably rather go... Welcome back to Credible or Not. In this video, we'll be looking at a theory surrounding the relationship between Jack and Rose in Titanic. The theory states that Jack is actually an imaginary love interest for Rose, with her being so distraught about the thought of marrying Cal, she dreamed Jack up to envision an ideal husband. If Rose was the only person who interacted with Jack, this theory could be credible, but we see many people interact with Jack, and several scenes where he appears without Rose. And if Jack never existed, then who is behind that drawing? It's pretty safe to say no on this one. Well, it's been more than 2 years since my, to date, most successful video. And I thought, why not do a follow-up to that video? Why not cover the DreamWorks animation films from 2023 onwards? They surpassed the number of Pixar films as early as 2000, and are currently sat on 48 theatrical animated feature films, as well as one direct-to-digital and one direct-to-video film, the last of which I do not intend to cover. At the end of the video, I will say where I'd rank them as a group of 6, and with the first 43 films. So let's rank some more animated DreamWorks movies, starting with... I can't remember the last time I saw a movie that managed to be boring, weird, unoriginal, and in its third act, stupid. Ruby Girl and Teenage Kraken ticks off all these boxes. It's boring when it's not any of the other three, it's weird when it tries to be all hip with the cool kids, it's unoriginal in how it feels like other films mashed into one, and it's stupid in the completely predictable plot twist in the third act. To elaborate on its unoriginality, it feels like a mashup of Luca and Turning Red, neither of which I'm particularly big on, but they're masterpieces compared to this. And while I wouldn't call Luca a wholly original film either, at least the sea creatures actually look like humans when they're not in contact with water. I genuinely have a hard time believing that anyone sees Ruby's family as humans. And unlike these two films, Ruby Girl and Teenage Kraken doesn't have particularly original or outstanding animation. Connor's eyes make him look high, and Chelsea looks like a discount Ariel, especially when she's revealed to be a mermaid. Over the course of the film, it feels like it's also copying Moana, which is a great film at least. I guess the uncle is an okay character and gets a funny line every so often.
Ah, she forgot to do me.
I don't even know you!
But most other aspects of the film are terrible. I'm just about to warn you I am going to get into spoilers, but this is really important to talk about. So if you'd rather not have it spoiled, feel free to jump to the next timestamp in the description. During the film, Ruby learns of her existence as a kraken, and her grandma tells her about creatures trying to seize power, including mermaids. We get the revelation that Chelsea is a mermaid, and then, big shock, she's the villain. Not only is this twist completely predictable, but it sends off a bad message about not trusting those who are different. Ruby's mother and grandma had told her not to trust mermaids, and they refused to trust Chelsea for this exact reason. Then, her villainous revelation reinforced that prejudice. So, yeah, this movie sucks. It's not as infuriating as Shrek the Third or Turbo, but it does have more boredom and worse animation than either of them, and is definitely among the worst DreamWorks animation movies. Can't see this franchise dying down soon, but Trolls Band Together is an improvement over Trolls World Tour, mainly because it has not just less James Corden, but also no James Corden. It does have Amy Schumer in it, and while I can't stand her, she's surprisingly not terrible in this. That said, it's fitting that she voices a villain who steals other people's talent. That aside, it's mostly, like the first two films, a boring experience. It has occasional creative moments with the visuals, but when it's not riding on cringy puns and cliches, it's pretty meh to be honest. Moving on. Orion in the Dark was really good, for the first 15 minutes. I was invested in Orion's situation of being scared about every single thing that could go wrong in a situation, and I was interested to see where it went, and potentially carry a very strong message about overcoming anxiety. Then it turned out to be a story Orion was telling to his daughter, and not a real one. But then the movie continues, and it's about night entity Dark trying to help Orion overcome his fear of the dark, only for Orion to inadvertently make Dark feel rejected when he says he finds light safe and warm. Then, when Orion struggles to figure out an ending to the story, his daughter takes over, and it becomes a confusing time travel story. The plot overall seems rather inconsistent and convoluted, and the fact that the story isn't even real removes a lot of the stakes, and makes me wonder what message it's trying to convey. The fact that Charlie Kaufman was the writer of this had me intrigued, as I really liked his screenplays for Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and Anomalisa. But this screenplay didn't do it for me, and I think having Orion tell the story in full to his daughter, with everything really happening, would be more impactful. By no means a terrible film, and one that could work if the script was modified, but a pretty mediocre one as it is. Kung Fu Panda 4 has enjoyable moments, and yet, it doesn't bring enough to the series to justify its existence. The animation is still great, and the voice acting is mostly good all around, with Viola Davis doing a good job as newcomer the Chameleon, even if the character is underwhelming. The action scenes aren't up there with the original, but they're fine. And yet, the film seems to prioritise action over plot. The first three films have their fair share of action scenes, but also a necessary amount of focus on the plot. It also lacks the emotional depth of the first three films, especially the first two. And the backstories of Jen and the Chameleon feel rushed. And in the case of the latter, her being underestimated for being quote-unquote too small makes no sense. Did they forget that Mantis is one of the Furious Five? They may not have been in the film that much, but the film still acknowledges their existence. While I didn't find Kai a particularly memorable villain, the Chameleon comes off as more underwhelming and not much of a threat, as shown by taking the powers and abilities of previous villains, and not having any unique ones of her own. Speaking of previous villains, Tai Lung, Lord Shen and Kai all return. And Tai Lung is the only one who does anything. There is good closure to Tai Lung's arc, and Ian McShane maintains the vocal talent he did in the first film, but neither Shen nor Kai speak or do anything, and feel like they're just there for fan service. And there is no way that Shen, the panda killer, would come to respect Po by the end. The humour is a mixed bag for me. There are funny moments with Shifu, Lee, and Mr. Ping, and Po and Jen trying to carefully flee through a china shop is pretty funny. Other parts? Not so much. A lot of animated franchises get milked these days, and by this film, Kung Fu Panda has become no exception. The first Kung Fu Panda was about Po learning his own method of Kung Fu. The second was about him learning about his family, and the third was where both came together. This one doesn't really expand on the third, and feels like it exists because we need another Kung Fu Panda, and an admittedly awesome cover of Baby One More Time by Jack Black. It's not terrible, but it doesn't add enough to justify its existence. The Wild Robot is phenomenal. The animation is amazing, and up there with the best of DreamWorks animation, and the score is one of the best to come out of any of their films. The songs Kiss the Sky and Even When I'm Not are also brilliant. But what really makes the film work is how sympathetic Roz is. As well as Lupita Nyong'o's superb vocal performance, Roz is just such a lovable character, who was initially shunned by the animals, only to end up setting off a chain of animals helping each other, for which she receives gratitude. While it has a somewhat cliched message of not judging based on appearances, the heartwarming nature of the film is one of many things that overshadow that. Another thing that overshadows this is the underlying themes of climate change and the impact it has on the safety of animals. In this case, the robots fighting against Roz contributes to the dangers that the animals on the island are put in, and the decision Roz makes at the end is a rather sad, but also beautifully executed one. After 4 consecutive underwhelming films, I was worried that DreamWorks Animation would never put out another good film. But The Wild Robot not only proved me wrong, but it's somewhere in my top 5 animated DreamWorks films. A beautiful and emotionally gripping experience. See it if you haven't already. If Dogman came out before The Wild Robot, I'd call it DreamWorks' best animated film since Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, up to the point of its release. And while it's rubbish compared to The Wild Robot, it's a good film overall. While parts of it are boring, other parts are quite funny, even if never outright hilarious like the Captain Underpants movie, which I'm hoping will get a sequel due to this film's critical and financial success. Petey is an entertaining villain, who generates a lot of fast-paced humour, and he has a wholesome arc of learning to be a good dad to his baby clone. The animation is good, and the climax is decent. Overall, while it's far from amazing, it's a good film. And it is amazing compared to most of DreamWorks' recent animated films. So, with those films ranked, let's look at the full ranking now that I've seen all animated DreamWorks films up to now. The ranking is mostly consistent with the previous DreamWorks ranking, but I have moved one film from that ranking up the ladder. Let's see what it is. So, at number 49, we have Spirit Untamed, Shark Tale, Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken, Turbo, The Boss Baby, Shrek the 3rd, The Boss Baby Family Business, Home, Trolls World Tour, Sinbad Legend of the Seven Seas, Trolls Band Together, Trolls, Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron, B-Movie, Orion in the Dark, Kung Fu Panda 4, Puss in Boots, Monsters vs. Aliens, Madagascar, Megamind, The Road to El Dorado, Dogman, Penguins of Madagascar, How to Train Your Dragon 2, Chicken Run, Madagascar Escape to Africa, and Madagascar 3 Europe's Most Wanted, The Croods, Abominable, How to Train Your Dragon The Hidden World, Kung Fu Panda 3, The Croods A New Age, Over the Hedge, Ants, Mr. Peabody and Sherman, The Bad Guys, Shrek Forever After, Rise of the Guardians, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, How to Train Your Dragon, Flushed Away, Shrek, Captain Underpants: The First Epic Movie, Kung Fu Panda, Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, Kung Fu Panda 2, The Wild Robot, Shrek 2, The Prince of Egypt. So, case in point, DreamWorks Animation can produce miracles when you believe, and hopefully, they'll produce more of them. So, Father Ted. Released 30 years ago, and still the most popular sitcom in Ireland, and for good reasons. A lot of this comes down to the great writing of Arthur Matthews, and, rather unfortunately, Graham Linehan. But, much like with Braveheart, Silver Linings Playbook, or indeed Harry Potter, I can separate the art from the artist. And it also comes down to many other great aspects of the show. The acting, the music, the visual style, etc. I've been a fan of Father Ted for over a decade, and I thought, why not rank it for its 30th anniversary? So, that's what I'm going to do here. And, if you're thinking of bad-mouthing me for having a different opinion, you can feck off. But anyway, let's head to Craggy Island to rank some iconic episodes. Starting with... a fantastic way to start the series, and superb ways of introducing all its characters. The episode is able to introduce and properly establish who the characters are. Ted, the everyman, Dougal, the childlike Egypt, Jack, the violent alcoholic, Mrs. Doyle, the hyperactive housekeeper, John and Mary, the secretly toxic couple, Tom, the violent Egypt. It has many hilarious moments, including just how shite Funland is, as well as various antics regarding the TV, including Jack destroying it, and Dougal pretending to be on it.
How did that gobshite get on the television?
What most of us ask about Mrs. Brown's Boys. And Dougal accidentally stealing Ted's interview at the end, as well as everyone's background reaction to Ted falling off the crane of death. I also love hysterically at the payoff to Ted's cartoon of reality versus dreams, and how Dougal revisualizes it during the interview. Absolutely phenomenal. Another hilarious episode. The awkwardness surrounding the presence of the incredibly boring Father Stone never gets old, especially when he wants to use the toilet while Ted is having a bath. And Michael Redman really conveys it. Do you want to praise your actor, Father Stone?
No, fine.
It's not quite as funny as the first episode, but it's still a great one all the same. This episode introduces Bishop Brennan, who manages to be simultaneously hilarious and loathsome, and Jim Norton conveys this very well. The episode also serves as insightful commentary on how people are willing to dismiss, or even protest films without watching them first, and also how controversy can prompt people to see films to understand why they're controversial. Hell, it's prompted me to watch some shite films for controversial cinema. Another great and hilarious episode. This is the very first episode of Father Ted I ever watched. It was the first episode on the Very Best of Father Ted DVD, and I watched the episodes on it quite frequently before getting the complete box set. As it is, it's a very good one, with lots of really funny moments. I like how Father Dunn is simultaneously hilarious and annoying, and I wonder whether or not I'd want to be him. Overly happy all the time, but also annoying to everyone else. And the 3 Ages of Elvis at the end is brilliant. It also introduces recurring character Father Dick Burton, and my god does he live up to his first name. I just don't find it as funny as the first 3 episodes overall, but it is still a really good episode, and it introduces a lot of great stuff to the series. This is a great episode. Seeing Ted catch feelings for an author he admires, despite this relationship being impossible, comes with a lot of funny moments, but also a sense of sadness. Over the course of the episode, there are many hilarious moments, particularly Ted getting punched when accidentally rear-ending a car, Mrs. Doyle ranting about the obscene language and sentences in Polly's books, Ted trying to come up with a ton of lies to avoid telling the nuns about his meeting with Polly, and it all going horribly wrong for him, Tom robbing the post office, and Jack laughing hysterically at Dougal getting stuck in the sofa at the end. Another absolute gem of an episode. While it is one of the weaker episodes of Season 1, it's still a really good episode. An episode themed around the supposed death of Father Jack is an interesting idea, and the episode delivers on it. It's not as funny as other episodes, but it has its fair share of hilarious moments, particularly Ted and Dougal playing charades, and Dougal pretending to be Jack. When your weakest episode is still really good, you know you've got a great season. So, a great start to the series, and hopefully Season 2 will follow suit. This is a great episode that manages to make the boredom of the campsite so hysterical. There's the iconic small and far away scene, but there's also the misencounters with the couple, and the husband ending up naked on the bonnet of their car, and Father Jack riding up the magic road, and ending up on a yacht with, you guessed it, girls! We also get our first appearance from Father Noel Furlong, played brilliantly by Graham Norton. This is a really good episode. While it's not quite as funny as other episodes, it's still got a ton of hilarious moments, including Ted trying to fix a dent in the car, only to destroy it, and the build-up to the revelation of the condition of the new car after Jack drove it. Dougal's misunderstandings regarding the rigged raffle are always funny too. A great episode. The events that take place before and during the Bishop's coming are all hilarious, particularly Ted trying to get Jack to say that would be an ecumenical matter, which pays off later on. At least, temporarily. And Dougal questioning religion to the point of some of the bishops resigning. There's also great moments with Mrs. Doyle struggling to see properly with her glasses on, and the dire situation with the toilet. While the bishop's visit wasn't a complete success, this episode was. Another hilarious episode. Seeing Dougal be negatively influenced by a teenage-like priest comes with many hilarious moments, but the theft of a whistle being the talk of Craggy Island, and how everyone becomes more security conscious is even better. The climax, in which Ted tries to come up with an explanation for having the whistle, even when he doesn't have to, is just brilliant. It's possible to make an everyman character funny on paper, but to really sell it, you have to hire an actor who can make the delivery hilarious. And Dermot Morgan was one of those many actors. A brilliant episode that managed to bring a real-life event into the show, Ireland continually winning Eurovision, something that Ted had mentioned in competition time. The episode has many hilarious moments, including Ted continuously swearing at Dougal after telling him not to take the song too seriously, the bad version of My Lovely Horse, and the absolute feckin' gibberish of the Song for Ireland presenter. My Lovely Horse, the good version, and The Miracle Is Mine are unironic bangers, and I really wish the former had been made Ireland's entry for Eurovision 2015. Do you think they would have had to lose that sax solo? A really good episode. Seeing Ted try to hide Dougal's rabbits from the arriving Bishop Brennan, only for it, along with Jack's bollock naked sleepwalking, to end badly for the Bishop, leads to a hilarious conclusion. The episode as a whole isn't as funny as some of the other episodes, but it is still a very good one. I want to believe that Neve's song on TV is ridiculing TERFs, but I'd have to be certain that Arthur Matthews wrote that part, and not Graham Linehan. That aside, this is a good episode. It's not the funniest episode in the series, but it does have a hilarious end credits scene, and some hilarious scenes of Dougal not knowing how to talk to Neve. This is by far the weakest episode so far, but it's still a good one. Another great episode. Seeing Ted opt to give up smoking for Lent, as well as getting Dougal and Jack to give up rollerblading and drinking, solely to one-up Father Dick Byrne, is a funny setup, and it leads to many hysterical moments from here. Such moments include Ted, Dougal and Jack realizing they can't resist temptation, Jack becoming sober, Dougal only remembering one specific part of a huge mishap that happened when he and Ted were with Sister Assumpta, and many of Assumpta's steps in Ted and Dougal's daily punishment. On this most recent rewatch of the episode, I think the ending is symbolic. Ted agrees to keep quiet about Assumpta giving into her temptation of chocolate, on the condition of her going to Rugged Island to punish Dick and Cyril for lying about giving up their own temptations. The only way it could have been funnier was if Ted responded by saying, well, aside from it coming to about £8, here's a mad idea, which would have been a funny parallel to when John and Mary charged him for the Easter eggs. While not as funny as other episodes, this is still a really good episode, and has the odd hilarious moment, such as the priests at St. Clabert yelling when the light is turned on, and when Ted and Dougal try to identify Jack. Guest star Brendan Grace also did a great job at making Father Finton Stack so insufferable. That character was probably the only person anyone would choose Jack over. This is a great episode. Watching priests cause havoc on a plane that almost results in their doom is very funny to watch, and the episode has many hilarious moments throughout, including Ted and Dougal's gift shop purchases, the discussion about who gets the parachutes, Jack stealing the parachutes, with one being for the drink cart, and the simultaneous tension and humour-filled climax. Safe to say, I would not want to be on a plane with most of these people. The show's first and only Christmas special, and also sadly the last episode to air during Dermot Morgan's lifetime. But it's a very funny one, with the whole scene in which the priests try to escape the huge laundry section of the shopping centre being simultaneously hilarious and suspenseful. While I do think it goes on too long, it does have many funny moments throughout, such as Mrs. Doyle trying to guess Todd's name, which has an extra layer of comedy on rewatch, her resentment of the tea-making machine, Jack ending up in the kid play area, and the kids swearing, and the priests making up lyrics to the French national anthem at Jack's request. They're a good episode overall. On average, on par with Season 1 in terms of quality, and hopefully the third and final season will continue that streak of success. A hilarious episode with many iconic moments. Seeing Ted do a racist impression of Chinese people right when Chinese people are looking through the window is just brilliant, and his attempt to invite them round to explain, only for his gestures to send off another inappropriate impression. But it's home to many other iconic moments, including Colm's famous,
I hear you're a racist now, Father!
quote, and asking if he should be racist. Ted going into the pub playing Irish music, only for it to be full of Chinese people playing Irish music, and not an Irish person in sight. Father Fitzpatrick accidentally ingesting cyanide, and Ted's laughable presentation at the diversity event. The episode just has so many iconic and hilarious moments, and is very likely to end up near the top of the final ranking. Another great episode. The myth of a beast on Craggy Island, and how everyone responds to it, including Chris the sheep, is hilarious. The climax regarding Ted's discovery, and how he calls out everyone who was complicit in cheating, is hilariously dramatic. Fucking hell. And the outcome for Ted himself is just the icing on the cake. This episode parodies the Speed films, and yet, it's unironically more suspenseful than Speed 2. And it's another brilliant episode all around. From Dougal vomiting on Ted, to Ted being hit on the head with a brick, there's never a dull moment. And it's hard to single out hilarious moments as a result, though the big bunch of boxes is certainly iconic. Pat Laffin guest stars as Pat Mustard, and manages to convey the comedic, seductive and sadistic traits of the character. Mustard is a great villain all around, and the way he catches Ted out when the latter calls him out on making a load of hairy babies is genuinely clever. This is going near the top of the final ranking for sure. 4 great episodes in a row. Seeing so much hassle come from Ted trying to collect his £200, with him and Dougal getting trapped in the caves, and Ted facing bad encounters with Noel, and actor Richard Wilson, Dougal being hungry, Jack getting his glasses stolen, leading to misunderstandings at an AA event, and Mrs. Doyle and her friend fighting over who pays the bill, makes for a very eventful and hilarious episode. The way these Season 3 masterpieces keep coming in, it's almost criminal. But yeah, this is another brilliant one. Seeing Ted try to prepare senior priests for a football match, which involves very slowly kicking the ball, and being lucky to even score a single goal, is just hysterical. The standout moments for me with this episode, aside from what's going on within the football match itself, are Mrs. Doyle trying to get into football, and Dougal teasing Cyril with the flagpole. And we get that simultaneous, suspenseful, and hilarious cliffhanger. Speaking of which, Continuing from the previous one, Ted has to carry out the forfeit of kicking Bishop Brennan up the arse.
Roll credits.
And it manages to be a very funny one. Not brilliant, but still a very good episode overall. And I do laugh hysterically at Ted carrying out the titular forfeit, before getting drunk and telling Dougal to blow up a copy of the photo 10 by 10, with Dougal thinking he means feet. And Jack's quote-unquote apology to Bishop Brennan is a hilarious case of sarcasm. It's also nice to see Dougal give words of wisdom every so often, even if the odd wise moment doesn't mean he's not more of an idiot than Ted and Jack put together. This is a good episode. While it's not outright hilarious like other episodes, the concept of a pop star being stalked by old women in the style of zombie apocalypse films is an interesting one. And the ending of Ted going on Eon's show and struggling to guess what should be a simple question for a priest is a hilarious moment. Dermot Morgan really showcased Ted struggling to think of an answer. And if you told me this scene boosted the votes for his posthumous BAFTA win, I'd totally believe you. And so we come to the last episode of Father Ted. And it's a good one. While it's objectively not one of the best episodes, it does have its fair share of funny moments, with Ted's visions of Dougal, Jack and Mrs. Doyle being the best part. Maybe my opinion on the episode is overshadowed by it being the end of the series, and the episode being harder to watch as a result, mainly the fact that Dermot Morgan died the day after filming finished. There's common discussion over whether or not the series would have continued had he not died, but this episode was always intended as the last one. The original ending to the episode was much darker, but the writers took it out due to not believing it was very funny, and Morgan's death made it seem especially dodgy. Whether or not taking this ending out would have left the show open to continue in a few years' time, ultimately, Morgan did die. Furthered by Frank Kelly's death exactly 18 years later, the series was never going to return, and to recast Ted and Jack is simply a lost cause. The montage at the end is bittersweet, showcasing the end of the series, but also reminding us of some of the show's best moments. And Ted and Dougal's final in-series interaction.
Night, Dougal. Night, Ted.
Representing a parallel to their first in-series interaction. Rest in peace, Dermot Morgan and Frank Kelly. So, we've reached the end of the series. You know you've got a great series when the best episodes are phenomenal, and the weakest are still a 7 out of 10. But now it's time to rank all the episodes from worst to best. So, at number 25, we have Night of the Nearly Dead, Rockahula Ted, Going to America, Think Fast Father Ted, New Jack City, The Plague, Kicking Bishop Brennan Up the Arse, A Christmassy Ted, Grant Unto Him Eternal Rest, Competition Time, Entertaining Father Stone, and God Created Woman, Hell, The Passion of Saint Tibulus, Old Grey Whistle Theft, Flight into Terror, Good Luck Father Ted, Tentacles of Doom, Escape from Victory, The Mainland, Chirpy Burpy Cheap Sheep, A Song for Europe, Cigarettes and Alcohol and Rollerblading, Are You Right There Father Ted, Speed 3. And with that, the only thing I have to say is, happy anniversary, Father Ted. So I'll be honest with you all. The idea for a video comparing Shrek and The Cat in the Hat came to me many years ago, while I was studying my BA at university. When I put it alongside other ideas for videos, including for ones covering films such as Jojo Rabbit and Frozen 2, it, to my surprise, was a more popular vote. And I started working on a video during my third year of uni. This ended up being postponed many times, and since 2022, ended up in development hell. But I decided to rewrite the script and re-record and re-edit the video, especially with the improved audio and editing of my recent videos. And now I'm bringing it to you. The Cat in the Hat was a film that I did not like growing up, especially as I found the titular cat too annoying and creepy, and the jokes unfunny. But as I've gotten older, I've met a lot of people who really like it, and while that's fine, it made me wonder, really? So eventually, I decided to go back and rewatch the film, just to see if it was any better. But honestly, it's as bad as I remember. But let's take a look at Shrek. Shrek has been an iconic movie and franchise for over 2 decades, with 2 good sequels. There was a significantly less good one in between, but we can disregard it. Hey, Shrek Forever After did. And there's another one coming out next year, but it's too early to voice a proper opinion. Anyway, after Shrek came out in 2001, many films tried to copy the film's formula, but although some films succeeded, more often than not, they simply failed to understand the context of the formula in Shrek, and it resulted in a number of terrible comedy films in the 2000s that featured excessive cultural references, pop songs, and childish attempts to make the film more appealing to adults. The Cat in the Hat is one of the worst films in this regard. The film in general is just awful, but it seems to be trying to copy Shrek's formula, though not having that many pop songs, while having more in common with it than simply this. including being a feature-length adaptation of a short story and starring Mike Myers. But while I currently have no plans to do a full video on why this film is a disaster, I think a lot of it can be summed up when talking about how Shrek does so many things better. So, let's get into these. For those who somehow don't know, The Cat in the Hat is based on a 61-page picture book written by the late Dr. Seuss. The book was a critical and financial success when it was published in 1957, and has become probably Seuss's most famous story. Something some of you may not know is that Shrek is based on a 30-page picture book written by the late William Steig. The book is not as famous as the film, and although I've only read the synopsis and not the book itself, I can still say it was turned into a great film. Both Shrek and The Cat in the Hat are based on short picture books, but while the former was turned into a great film that became the inaugural Best Animated Feature winner and even received a Best Adapted Screenplay nomination, as well as being added to the National Film Registry in 2020, the latter became an abysmal film that was lambasted by critics, flopped at the box office, and killed all future plans for live-action Seuss movies. But at least it's inspired some funny memes. In the case of Shrek, the story told is actually really intriguing, working as a piss-take of fairy tales and Disney movies, and almost every scene and character is integral to the story, with the exception of the Hallelujah song sequence, which isn't even really making fun of the misunderstanding bit, but when the rest of the story works so well, it's not such a big deal. The Cat in the Hat, on the other hand, really does not need to be as long as it was, and throws in a lot of stupid and pointless scenes and characters that don't really enhance the story, and makes problematic changes to the book. Artistic license is fine, but not when you take away what made the source material great and replace it with stuff that is nowhere near as good. And The Cat in the Hat is a perfect example of disrespecting the source material. So let's look at the characters in Shrek, including Shrek himself. Shrek is an interesting character. He has layers! He's an ogre who enjoys living alone in a swamp, and being a disgusting guy. However, he's been alone for so long that he's never properly acknowledged his loneliness. Shrek's arc of acknowledging the downsides to life and his insecurities, learning his own flaws, and learning to love both romantically and platonically, are achieved through the actions of Donkey, Fiona, and Farquaad. So Shrek is a character a lot of us can identify with, and overall, a likeable, intriguing protagonist. Donkey serves as the comic relief side character, but he also serves importance in the film's narrative. He helps Shrek get to Duloc, and it's him who Shrek opens up to about how everyone judges him without knowing him, which Donkey hasn't done. And this makes Shrek realise that someone does care about him. Shrek initially disliked Donkey, but has come to accept him as a friend, and realises he may be a good person himself. Fiona is also integral to the story, as her being locked in a tower is the quest Farquaad sends Shrek on, so that Shrek can get rid of all the fairy tale creatures in his swamp. But through getting to know her, Shrek learns to love someone, and she also finds love in him, which makes Shrek acknowledge even more appreciation of himself. Plus, she hears Shrek opening up to Donkey, and this makes her realise that she may have been too judgmental herself, which only furthers the point about Donkey's importance in the story. And Farquaad is obviously integral to the story, because without him, Shrek never would have gone on the quest in the first place. Plus he does generate some good laughs. Although, the jokes about his height are not so funny. They get thin very quickly, but they also kind of contradict the message about not judging people based on appearances, in an otherwise really well executed message. Then we have The Cat in the Hat. The characters are so unlikable, and they really contradict the more simple, interesting characters of the book. In the book and 1971 TV special, the cat was kind, caring, funny, and although a bit of a nuisance, he was never a legitimate threat, and he knew when enough was enough. In the film, he's annoying, creepy, mean, sadistic, crude, and perverted, and he causes havoc beyond what the book counterpart did. He gets the kids to sign a contract agreeing that nothing bad will happen, and yet, loads of bad stuff happens. But he's not the only awfully written character in this movie. Conrad and Sally are also terribly written characters, who completely contradict the book's message, this being that sometimes a little bit of rule breaking is okay as long as it doesn't go too far. Dr. Seuss got this across well, because the kids were normal kids. However, as Nostalgia Critic has similarly mentioned, Conrad is already a messy troublemaker, and Sally is a hypocritical, self-obsessed control freak, which makes the message confused. What's more, Sally has a plotline about no one liking her for obvious reasons, and at one point, we see that her friends had a party and didn't invite her. The film dwells on this for a moment, to make it look like she'll reconcile with her friends, but it goes nowhere. And then we have Sally being the Peppa Pig narrator in the next scene by stating the obvious.
Can't believe it wasn't invited to that party.
The mother is a thinly written character as well. Her quote-unquote argument with Conrad feels too mean-spirited from both of them, especially since there's not enough build-up for such harsh words to come from them. In addition, Larry, a character who wasn't even in the original books, has a story thread in this film. But there is actually no reason for him to be in the story. His presence has absolutely no impact, and he's such a weak villain. 90% of his dialogue is him laughing evilly and bragging about his scheme, If you were to take a shot every single time a character mentioned military school in this film, you'd probably be passed out on the floor. But what's a good character without a good performance? For this one, I'm going to be going with line delivery, because the acting in Shrek doesn't involve facial expression or body language, and thus I couldn't compare the two films in this regard. But one of the things that makes Shrek so good is the vocal performances. Talk about getting the best people to voice these characters. Mike Myers was clearly very passionate about this film, to the point where he re-recorded all his dialogue with a Scottish accent, and it very much improved the film. Eddie Murphy, Cameron Diaz and John Lithgow are all perfectly cast as well, and they can make the simplest lines hilarious in their delivery and timing.
Why are you following me?
Where do, I sleep?
Outside! Now kiss me!
These lines aren't funny on paper, but the way the actors deliver the lines is what makes them hilarious. But these actors also nail the more serious line deliveries. The emotional beats are carried very well through the more serious interactions between Myers, Murphy and Diaz, while Lithgow is almost entirely in the comedic department, but also hilarious nonetheless. Then we have the Cat in the Hat. My god, are these performances terrible. These performances are contenders for the least interested performances I've ever seen in a film. Mike Myers had to be legally forced to do this film, and that really shows in his vocal performance, putting on an incredibly annoying voice, and always sounding like he's out of breath. He certainly did not put the same passion into this project as he did with Shrek. The other performances are terrible as well. While it is partly on the writers for not giving enough build-up to the serious conflicts the film tries to present, the actors also deliver it horribly. I've got nothing against these actors, and Dakota Fanning has proven herself to be a better actress in other things, but in this film, neither she nor Spencer Breslin show any interest in their roles whatsoever. And the same can be said for Kelly Preston as the mother. As a result, the emotional beats the film tries to get feel forced from a writing point of view and from an acting point of view.
Why don't you go upstairs? The stairs are destroyed.
You know, that joke might have worked, except the delivery was so monotone, and not in a comedic deadpan way, it ruined it. And let's get further into the execution of humour. So something a lot of kids' movies have, to keep the parents engaged too, is adult-orientated humour. And I'm perfectly okay with kids' movies sliding a few adult jokes into their films, if they're subtle. Shrek features a lot of adult jokes, but it manages to keep them subtle so that kids won't pick up on or question them, and the majority of them are quite funny. The It's a Small World-esque puppet show outside Duloc is quite funny, and the lyrics manage to slide in an adult joke in a subtle way, because although parents will know the word ass is implied, kids will see that face rhymes with place, and not notice the implied rude rhyme that parents will pick up on. Another one that works well is actually a double entendre.
Wait, where are you going?
Well, I have to save my ass.
The double entendre is subtle, because as well as ass being the American word for arse, it's also a term for a donkey, who Shrek is trying to save. The film even slides in a scene where Lord Farquaad gets a little too excited over Princess Fiona and pulls the covers up. When I was a kid, I thought his chest was cold. As a teen, I realised he was hiding something that was long, hard, and had cum in it. And no, it wasn't a cucumber. And speaking of Farquaad, his name, of course, sounds like fuckwad. But of course, in the film, it's shown to be spelled as Farquaad, and as such, kids don't pick up on the F word. So let's look at the adult jokes in The Cat in the Hat, of which there are many.
Who is this? Oh.
That's my mom.
Awkward. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a kid could figure out that that's a little more than amazement. A film that does a similar joke to this is Toy Story 2, where Buzz's wings pop open after he sees Jessie let Buster out. But it works much better there, because when you're younger, it actually does come across as Buzz being speechless, and it's kept short and sweet. And then when you get older, you finally understand the situation, and it's funny. The Cat in the Hat, however, dwells on it for far too long.
Here she is, the super luxurious omnidirectional whatchamajigger, or SLOW for short.
SLOW?
Yeah, slow. It's better than the last name we had. Super hydraulic instantaneous transporter.
Oh, you mean...
No! Quick to the slow!
Again, a kid can figure that out. Given that SLOW is an abbreviation for super luxurious omnipotent whatchamajigger, and the film makes that clear, I think a kid can very easily take the first letter from each word of super hydraulic instantaneous transporter and spell shit. Madagascar did a similar joke to this, but it was much more subtle there, because although Marty says, "Oh, sugar honey iced tea," there's no implication for a kid to take the first letter of each word. If you want to make a kids movie and slide some adult jokes in for the adults watching it with them, remember to stick to the 3 S's: short, sweet, subtle. But if you want your execution to end up like The Cat in the Hat, go with the other 3 S's: slow, sickening, shit. Something else Shrek does well is the use of burps and farts. And that sounds weird, but they're used to establish the disgusting nature of ogres, whether it be Shrek farting in the pond, or burping to light a fire. You also have a scene where Donkey calls out Shrek for burping in front of Fiona, only for Fiona to do the same thing. Shrek and Donkey look at each other as if they weren't expecting it from a princess, which more or less represents how Fiona works as a parody of Disney princesses, while rejecting the stereotypes that can be found in many of them. So, as weird as it sounds, burps and farts have context in Shrek, at least for the most part in these three films. Not you, Shrek the Turd. And I cannot say the same about The Cat in the Hat. There is so much toilet humour in this film, and none of it is funny. There's burping and farting, and also piss jokes. The cat literally mentions about how the fish drinks where he pees. And there's more.
I knew that milk would come back to haunt me. I can't believe you whizzed on my taco!
I wet my jar.
Ugh. And there's also this joke.
Let's take a look under the hood. Where's my jack? Sorry.
Oh yeah, stereotypes. This film has several. And the stereotype is pretty much always the punchline. Did you ever notice how The Cat in the Hat has a lot of stereotypes? That's the joke. Yep, this film has the same problems as a lot of modern Family Guy. Taking certain stereotypes and making them the punchline of the joke. Stereotypes do not equal humour. And that might sound weird when you consider shows like The Simpsons, South Park and The Inbetweeners, which feature a lot of stereotypical characters, but they don't usually make the stereotype the punchline of the joke, whereas this film pretty much does. Although this scene does also have the one mildly funny joke in the whole film.
Just sign my petition with this large, oversized pen that requires 2 hands.
And there's also jokes that I don't get even as an adult.
She was gonna wear that tonight and you ruined it.
Honey, it was ruined when she bought it. Yeah.
Or this one. First off, why did the cat need to replace himself with the piñata? And I'll let the rest of it speak for itself. I straight up don't get these jokes.
You should have gone for the head.
So, I think those are all the comparisons I can make between the two films regarding the performances, the extended runtime of the source material, the character writing and development, the adult humour, and the toilet humour. But before I wrap it all up, I actually would like to take the time to mention the few things I do like about The Cat in the Hat. So, while I do hate The Cat in the Hat overall, there are a few areas of the film that aren't terrible. Although it does have horrible makeup and visual effects, the sets and costumes are actually pretty good for the most part. They're detailed, colourful, and actually look like they were ripped out of a Dr. Seuss book. Though I don't like how the cat's costume looks like a giant skunk. Maybe this was the fate of Pepe Le Pew, and that's why he was absent from Space Jam 2, potentially even killed at the hands of these even more atrocious characters. While I find the Fun 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 song very annoying and repetitive, the instrumental scores are actually pretty nice to listen to, and the cinematography is unironically amazing. I can't fault any contribution made by the amazing Emmanuel Lubezki. His cinematography is great, even when the film isn't. And there's that single mildly funny joke I mentioned earlier. And now on to the conclusion. So while Shrek has committed vocal performances, makes proper use of a longer runtime, creates interesting characters and character arcs, executes adult humour well, and provides context for its toilet humour, The Cat in the Hat doesn't do any of these. The performances are wooden, the characters and their arcs are boring, the adult humour is horribly executed and unfunny, and the toilet humour is completely gratuitous.
Please. Outside!
I don't think I need to go any more into depth on why Shrek is a great movie, because I can't really add much beyond these points, but I chose to do this video to show that a lot of things The Cat in the Hat does horribly can be done much better. And Shrek, being a very funny and impactful movie, was the first to come to mind in conveying this. The Cat in the Hat, however, is just insulting. While there was clearly effort put into the sets, costumes, cinematography and music, clearly no effort was put anywhere else beyond this. You legitimately have to try to make a movie this bad. It's not the worst film I've ever seen, but I can't bring myself to give it any more than a 2 out of 10, and that's for the people who actually seem to give a shit about their jobs, including the great Emmanuel Lubezki. Also, if you ask me who I think should have directed this movie, I'd probably say Wes Anderson. The visual style is like something you'd see in one of his films. I do wonder who he would have cast to play the cat. Possibly either Bill Murray or Owen Wilson. Though I do wonder if Bill Murray would add this portrayal of a cat to his list of regrets as well as Garfield. A while back, I did a video comparing Shrek and The Cat in the Hat, and why the former worked and the latter didn't. In that video, I said this.
Something some of you may not know is that Shrek is based on a 30-page picture book written by the late William Steig. The book is not as famous as the film, and although I've only read the synopsis and not the book itself, I can still say it was turned into a great film.
After the video came out, I contemplated doing a follow-up to that video, which would include reading the Shrek book. Shrek is a great movie, but is it a great adaptation? Well, let's find out. Shrek is a fractured fairy tale story, but it utilises this in a different way to the film. The story is about a sadistic ogre named Shrek, who enjoys causing havoc. His parents decide he must be sent out into the world to do his share of damage, and, literally, kick him out the swamp. Shrek learns of his fortune from a witch, who tells him that by saying the magic words, apple strudel, he will be taken to a castle by a donkey, where he will battle a knight and marry a princess even uglier than him. Along the way, Shrek causes havoc to various creatures he encounters, before meeting the donkey, who takes him to the castle. Shrek confronts and defeats the knight guarding the castle, and meets the princess, with whom he is mutually smitten by their shared ugliness. They marry, and live horribly ever after. Shrek is shown to be content with his terrifying appearance and personality, wanting to have dominance over others, as shown in his nightmare where kids are shown to not be afraid of him. This is also represented when he enters the castle. Although initially frightened by what appears to be an army of hideous creatures, it's merely the Hall of Mirrors, which allows Shrek to maintain his confidence. Shrek embodies a typical fairy tale story, but is told from the perspective of a not-so-typical protagonist. This being a villainous protagonist with a horrific appearance, who is content with this, and able to find true love in spite of his terrifying appearance and persona. Most typical fairy tales see the villain lose, but in this one, the villain wins, showcasing how some villains do indeed get happy endings. And now let's talk about the film. The film plays out the fractured fairy tale approach differently from the book. Due to films being able to have more aspects than just writing and illustrations, and the film being made after the Disney Renaissance ended, Shrek was able to utilise pop songs to serve as a contrast to Disney's musical numbers. Although the Shrek book did have grainy illustrations, the limitations of these illustrations, and the fact that computer animation was early stages at the time, wouldn't have allowed for it to have a 3D art style to contrast with Disney's 2D style. By the time the film came out, computer animation was advanced enough that they could use it to tell a story starring an ogre, donkey, and 2 humans, and the grainy 3D art style was used to contrast with Disney's clean 2D aesthetic. In the book, the characters are much less fleshed out, mainly due to the book only being 30 pages. In the book, Shrek is much more villainous, taking full pride in his intimidating appearance and nature, and having no redeeming qualities. The donkey only appears to take Shrek to the castle, and the princess only appears at the end, and she and Shrek live horribly ever after. Shrek has a nightmare in which kids are not afraid of him, showing how he fears the idea of not being feared, as he would not be able to continue terrorising those who came across him. This may have been the inspiration for the plot point in Shrek Forever After, where he longs for the days where he was feared. The book's short length, and the film's feature length, allowed for the characters in the films to be more fleshed out, with Shrek being capable of being disgusting, and also feared by the villagers. But, rather than relishing in this, it makes him insecure, and prefers to be alone on account of people judging him before they know him. His arc involves him learning to appreciate himself, open up to others about his insecurities, and find genuine connections in his friendship with Donkey and feelings for Fiona. Donkey does help Shrek get to the castle, but also serves as a comic relief, and the one who Shrek opens up to and finds a friend in, which is part of his character arc. And Fiona isn't just there to be Shrek's love interest, nor is she ugly 24/7. She's the human princess who Shrek has been sent by Lord Farquaad, who is not in the original book, to rescue. They don't fall in love at first sight either, but rather through forming a genuine connection. And when Fiona reveals her ogre curse to Shrek, which becomes 24/7, he reassures her that he still finds her beautiful, leading to their marriage, which is attended by their newfound friends. While the book and film take different approaches in reaching their messages, the underlying themes and messages of learning to love yourself, and how you can find love regardless of appearance, are present in both. So with all this said, is Shrek a great adaptation? While Shrek is a great film, I wouldn't necessarily call it a great adaptation, mainly because there's so much artistic license. However, artistic license doesn't equal a bad adaptation. I consider the film a good adaptation on account of understanding the book's message, about being true to yourself and how anyone, regardless of appearance, is capable of finding love. While I do prefer the film by a landslide, I do think the book is good, and I think both stand out in their own ways, while both maintaining a similar message and good executions of that message. A lot of people are not familiar with the original book of Shrek, and if you haven't read it, I'd recommend doing so. Some parents objectified to the book, feeling it was unsuitable for children. Now, what could possibly be... Well, I'm back with another ranking. This time, I'll be ranking the films of filmmaker Christopher Nolan. Nolan was my favourite filmmaker as a teen, and as an adult, is still one of my favourites. His films are almost always rich in thematic storytelling and sophistication, and come with intriguing story structures and character arcs. While not all of his films are great, or even good, even his worst films come from a place of passion rather than obligation. So, park your Batmobile, Tumblr, and come inside for the Nolan ranking, starting with... So, while Nolan does have a pretty strong track record through films we'll cover later on, there are two that really miss the mark. The worst Nolan film is the only one I describe as pretentious, and the title of that film is one that you can make from the word pretentious. And that film is... Sweeten it up. Nah, just kidding, it's Tenet. Tenet is by no means a lazy film, but it feels too wrapped up in how supposedly complex and sophisticated its premise is. By the time the film finished, I remembered very little about it, mainly because none of the characters are memorable. The characters in Dunkirk are not the most interesting, but it doesn't really matter in that film, because the film isn't really about them. The film is about the Dunkirk evacuation. It's the story of Dunkirk. Tenet is very much a character-driven story, and while the performances are fine, they're not working with memorable characters. On a side note, this is Michael Caine's final time working with Nolan, and he's unfortunately rather underused. There's nothing wrong with complex stories. Hell, this is what Nolan is known for. But with Nolan's other films, I could tell you what they're about. Memento is about a man trying to use receipts to help him find his wife's killer. Inception is about a man trying to perform a task of entering other people's dreams. Interstellar is about astronauts trying to find a new home for mankind. As a whole, these films are by no means simple, but their concepts are ones that are easy to describe in vague summary. With Tenet, to give you an idea of what the film is about, I'd have to read the Wikipedia plot summary. The film follows a former CIA agent who is recruited into a secret organisation, tasked with tracing the origin of objects that are travelling backward through time, and their connection to an attack from the future to the present. I'm getting confused just reading that. The film was also heavy on exposition through dialogue, yet I can't remember or absorb a single line from the film. On a technical level, Tenet is pretty great, and the acting is good overall, but the script itself comes off as overly convoluted and pretentious. Fortunately, however, Nolan has proven himself to be a great filmmaker, and while we do have one more bad film to talk about, we will then journey to the films that range from good to great. So, Nolan's only other bad film. It's one that kind of sums up the events of the film, but sadly not the quality, and that film is The Dark Knight Rises. The film isn't awful, and it has its fair share of saving graces. The performances are good all around, with Anne Hathaway adding to the badass nature of newcomer Selena Kyle. The best performance for me would be Michael Caine, who really showcases the emotion in Alfred's expressions and line deliveries, possibly even improving on his already superb acting in the first two films. I also like the scene in which Alfred reveals he'd hoped Bruce wouldn't return to Gotham at the end of his training, instead wanting him to have moved forward in life and lived a happy life away from Gotham. And while the ending raises a ton of questions, seeing Alfred witness Bruce doing exactly what he'd hoped gives it a spark of poignancy. I don't mind the decision for Bruce to retire as Batman following the events of The Dark Knight, as he became a wanted criminal due to taking the fall for Harvey Dent's crimes, and also due to the guilt he felt over not being able to save Rachel, who died in part because of her connection to Batman. That said, his return to vigilantism is underwhelming as a whole, partly because we see a lot of Bruce, but very little Batman. Speaking of Harvey Dent, it seems weird that Gotham continues to mourn him for 8 years after his death, considering that he was simply a politician. The film becomes more and more underwhelming as it goes on. While I don't blame Tom Hardy for this, he wasn't the right choice for Bane, especially given that he's shorter and less muscular than Christian Bale, which makes Bane being able to easily beat Batman all the less believable. And the voice sounds like Patrick Stewart doing a Yoda impression.
So back to die with your city. You came...
But at least he seems like an intelligent man.
Oh, I seem intelligent. How lovely of you to say.
On the topic of Bane, we get the scene when he reveals the truth about Dent. This is Nolan's first film to use both 185:1 and 239:1 aspect ratios, and it most notably comes off as jarring during these crosscuts, when James Gordon listens to Bane reveal the truth about Dent, and it constantly jumps between the 239:1 ratio with Gordon and the 185:1 ratio with Bane, even though both are focusing on dialogue and or characters reacting to something. What's more, we never see how anyone reacts to the news other than Gordon, so it doesn't mean anything. But where everything really falls apart is in the third act. The action scenes are at their most laughable here, I don't think I need to explain why. But then we get this exchange between Bane and Batman when the latter returns to Gotham.
So you came back to your city?
No. I came back to you.
Then we get Bale's Batman voice at its most laughable, when he keeps yelling,
Where is it? Where is it?
At Bane. But at least it comes with this line from Batman.
Tell me where the trigger is. Then you have my permission to die.
This is a good counter to Bane's line to him earlier in the film.
We will destroy Gotham. Then you have my permission to die.
And then we find out that Tate, a character who was played as a heroine, is actually the mastermind. Not only does it completely undermine Bane, oh, my mistake, he's a tool, but it also raises the question as to how Batman didn't realise it. And both of their deaths are the most anticlimactic shit ever.
We did 20 ticks, and that was the best one.
Then Batman uses the bat to dispose of the bomb. Some days you can get rid of a bomb, and is presumed dead, along with Bruce also being presumed dead. Damn, Nolan actually went ahead and killed... Oh wait, Bruce is still alive. How is Bruce, a famous billionaire, able to spend the rest of his life walking around unnoticed? Are you really telling me not one person would stop and think, hang on, isn't he dead? It'd honestly make more sense if Bruce was correctly presumed alive, and thus Bruce could live solely as Bruce without raising any suspicion. We also learn that police officer John Blake, a character who didn't get enough character development or training over the course of the film, receives a package from Bruce leading him to the Batcave. Oh, and his legal first name is Robin. Bit of an underwhelming revelation, to be honest, and makes you wonder if he really was the right person to follow in Batman's footsteps. Not an awful film, but a disappointing end to a once great franchise. But at least Nolan never tried to milk it after this. Following, Christopher Nolan's first film, and yeah, it shows. The script and acting are quite good overall. There's an intriguing story built up, with a lot of suspense and twists, that carries a good message about not getting caught up with strangers, or in the criminal world. And it's performed quite well by the actors. But, as mentioned, this is Nolan's first film, and made on a $6,000 budget, so I can't say I was expecting anything mind-blowing. And yeah, the technical aspects are more of a mixed bag overall. The sound mixing can be slightly jarring at times, such as when the blonde is describing the guy in depth being tortured by the bald guy, and the scream sounds like something out of a YouTube video. The scene itself also feels kind of staged in how the bald guy hammers his fingers. It kind of looks like he's just lightly tapping them. Similarly, a later scene in which the young man knocks over pots and pans sounds like a distorted scream, as does the scream the blonde lets out near the end. So, while it's definitely not one of Nolan's masterpieces, it's still a good movie overall, and if made later on in Nolan's career, it would likely rank higher on the list. A good start overall. Interstellar is a really good film. It can be a bit too slow and tedious at times, but for the most part, I really liked its themes, performances, and technical aspects. My god, are the effects outstanding. I also think the use of different aspect ratios works in the film's favour, using 185:1 for shots focusing on the atmosphere, and 239:1 for shots focusing on characters and or dialogue. The film picks up for me in the 30-minute mark, with Cooper having to leave his daughter behind, unsure as to when he'll see her again. It's a very sad moment, and you want to see him find a way to see her again, even as he leaves Earth and receives video messages surrounding his children growing older, which he sadly doesn't get to witness in person. And Matthew McConaughey's performance especially sells the emotion of these scenes. The last 20 minutes are where the film becomes phenomenal, with a high amount of emotional depth and mind-blowing effects to boot. I don't want to give away too much, but we get a highly emotional conclusion to a relationship between two characters, and an ending that gives a sense of hope for what will happen after the end of the story. While I don't love the film as a whole, I do think it's a very good movie. I've seen it twice now, and maybe the third viewing will be the one where I come to believe it's a great movie. Only time will tell. Insomnia is built up in such a suspenseful and intense way. Al Pacino is fantastic in the leading role, really representing Will Dormer's insomnia due to his guilt about accidentally killing his colleague. Robin Williams goes against type by playing a serious villain, and he's also very good in this, showcasing that he was great at playing serious heroes and also serious villains. I love the way this film is shot and edited, adding to the atmosphere and the occasional uncertainty as to what time of day the film is taking place at. But the ending we get to is a fantastic ending, and while I don't want to give too much away, it provides a symbolic, though not ideal, solution to Dormer's insomnia. While it's Nolan's only film he didn't write, his direction very much contributes to another great movie of his. What starts off as a good movie gradually progresses into a great one with The Prestige. Watching two enemy magicians trying to one-up each other and bring the other down through their mysterious magic tricks is a great and suspenseful story, leading to a pretty amazing twist regarding the main trick that one of them had up their sleeve. The cast are all superb, with Christian Bale showcasing a sense of suspicion in the secrecy and subtlety of his character's tricks, but Hugh Jackman stands out the most for me, brilliantly showcasing Robert Angier's range of emotions: happiness, sadness, anger, determination, you name it. With Andy Serkis playing a supporting role, this makes two films he did with Jackman in 2006, both an animated one and a live-action one. Another well-made, written, and acted masterpiece from Nolan. Batman Begins is a great first installment. A more realistic take on Batman, it reboots his backstory, and what leads to him becoming the Caped Crusader, and in a pretty amazing way. While I initially wasn't the hugest fan of Christian Bale as Batman, I did always think he was good. This time around, I think he's great. Not necessarily as good as Ben Affleck or Michael Keaton, but still pretty strong in the role. Yeah, the voice he does for Batman is terrible, but otherwise, he does come off as quite threatening. And Bruce Wayne has a strong arc over the course of the film, initially bent on killing Joe Chiller's revenge, before being talked out of it, and developing a moral compass in not killing or using guns. Most of the other performances in the film are very good too. The only performance I don't like is Katie Holmes as Rachel Dawes. Her lack of range or genuine emotion makes me glad that she turned down reprising the role in The Dark Knight. Before playing the Destroyer of Worlds, Cillian Murphy played the intended Destroyer of Gotham in this film, and there he successfully showcases Scarecrow's psychopathic tendencies. Everyone raves about Heath Ledger's scary portrayal of the Joker in The Dark Knight, and rightfully so, but Murphy's performance across the films is quite overlooked. The cinematography is brilliant, with the darkly lit shots providing contrast that not only makes it visually appealing, but also easy to make out what's happening on screen. Then again, most Batman films succeed at this. As well as being emotionally gripping, the film is also very funny when it wants to be.
Where are you?
Here.
And while Bruce and Alfred have a touching relationship, Alfred is also capable of being funny.
What is the point of all those push-ups if you can't even lift a bloody log?
We've had a bad Batman, but we've yet to have a bad Alfred. Big up Michael Caine's performance here. Overall, a new take on Batman's origin story, and certainly a welcome one. It's kind of hard to believe that this is Nolan's first director nomination, but it's certainly a warranted one, and this film was a warranted Best Picture nominee. While I can understand someone not liking the film due to the characters being pretty one-note, it doesn't really matter to me, because Dunkirk is not about the characters. Dunkirk is about, and the story of, Dunkirk, told from the perspectives of land, sea and air, which is a well-executed structure. Rather than mainly relying on character interactions, Dunkirk uses cinematography and music to create its tension, and these aspects are phenomenal. If this is the last time Hans Zimmer scores a Christopher Nolan film, then what a score for him to finish their collaborations on. I don't have a lot to say about most of the performances, mainly because, as mentioned, they're not the focus. Although I will say Cillian Murphy plays the shivering soldier very convincingly. This is his fifth film with Nolan, and his second non-Dark Knight one, and I honestly hope they keep working together. I do think it's interesting to see Harry Styles' film debut. This is the first Nolan film I saw on the big screen, back when I had just finished my GCSEs, and one of my classmates messaged me and asked if Harry was amazing and if he looked fit. That was certainly something. I will say it's funny how Styles' film debut, in regards to storytelling, is told from more than one direction. Overall, an incredibly well-made film that stands out amongst other war films, primarily for its structure. I want Christopher Nolan to perform Inception on me, so I'll understand how he keeps coming up with such genius movies. Inception is a film that really plays with your mind. In my case, so much that it blew it with how brilliant it was. The concept of entering other people's dreams to implant ideas is such a smart concept, yet one of such complexity that even the characters themselves have to try and comprehend how it all works. And with the execution, we get amazing action scenes, a genuine amount of suspense, and some real poignancy as Leonardo DiCaprio's character Dom Cobb has to prevent memories of his wife's death from intervening with the many layers of dreams, and try to make peace with his indirect involvement in her death. On a technical level, the film employs all kinds of groundbreaking effects, from the town exploding, to the town literally closing in, to the spinning hallway. Now this is a great use of effects. And it's also superbly shot, edited, and scored, which adds to the tension of many scenes in the film. I could talk about the ending and my interpretation of it, and I think I will. Seeing as Leo's wife in this film is over 25, the entire film was a dream. Oppenheimer. Nolan's Best Picture and Best Director winning movie. At the time of me writing this, I finished my rewatch not too long ago, and I'm just absolutely fucking mind blown. I did take down notes as I went along though, so when I can process and put together my thoughts in full, I will. Okay, let's go. Oppenheimer is a fantastic film. Something that really impresses me about the film is how, even though it's based on a true story, it manages to utilise a non-linear narrative that not only doesn't take away from the story, but improves it. I recommend going into this film without knowing too much about the true story, because that way, the twists and revelations will be more effective. The music aids the narrative structure in how it builds up the tension between the back and forth time jumps and the development of the atomic bomb. The cast are fantastic, with Cillian Murphy in particular knocking it out of the park as J. Robert Oppenheimer, and, along with the editing and visuals, really showcases Oppenheimer's initial concentration on science, which later changes to a sense of guilt and probable insomnia when realising what the atomic bomb is truly capable of, how he's destroyed the world, and how there's no going back. Robert Downey Jr. is also brilliant as Lewis Strauss, and effectively showcases a turn of events that influenced Strauss' decisions later on in the film, mainly regarding a conversation that he believed happened between Oppenheimer and Einstein. I like how the film doesn't show Oppenheimer delivering the "I am become death" speech, but rather shows him saying it in a voiceover during the Trinity test, and why he uses this grammar, a translation from an ancient Sanskrit scripture. On that note, the Trinity test scene is absolutely incredible, and very effective in the initial lack of sound in the explosion, before Oppenheimer's
"And now I am become death"
voiceover, and then the explosion sounds. Of the 2023 films I've seen, I'd say Oppenheimer deserved Best Picture, and that's saying something given that there's two better films to talk about. Now this is a phenomenal film. It's probably pointless explaining why Heath Ledger is so brilliant as the Joker, but I can't not go over it. Ledger was out of this world as the Joker, making him a genuinely scary and realistic threat to others, while also managing to nail the sadistic sense of humour of the character, as you'd expect from a character called the Joker. Ledger, along with the Nolans, brought a perfect balance in the Joker's intimidation and sadistic sense of humour. The scene in which the Joker blows up the hospital even comes with that improvisation from Ledger, in which he humorously reacts to not all the explosives going off, only to then flee when they do. As a whole, The Dark Knight, to an even higher extent than Batman Begins, is a comic book film that rejects the common comic book movie style in favour of being a crime drama that features realistic takes on comic book characters. And the execution is brilliant, with the realistic setting and themes bringing that scary reminder that not everyone can be reasoned with. And, as Alfred puts it,
some men just want to watch the world burn.
And, while the Joker does get Batman to break his no-killing rule when Batman is forced to kill Harvey Dent to save James Gordon's family, Batman wants the city of Gotham to maintain hope by taking the fall of Harvey Dent's crimes, as to let the people believe that Dent died a hero and maintain a society that continued to see the good in humanity. It leaves you wondering whether or not the Joker truly wins in the end. With a variety of underlying and well-executed themes addressing moral boundaries, terrorism, vigilantism, and hope that all come together into a thought-provoking masterpiece, The Dark Knight, while not perfect, is the greatest superhero film I've ever seen. And yet, I wouldn't call it the greatest Nolan film. Now this is a masterclass in non-linear storytelling, and also, just making a phenomenal film in general. Memento has been one of my favourite films since I first watched it as a teen. Revisiting it for this video, it's even better. I would say I'm lost for words, but for the sake of analysis, I'd rather not. A film that, while likely to be very confusing, and requires a lot of attention at all times, rewards you with a mind-blowing payoff, as Leonard tries to find the killer of his wife, keeping receipts of events that have happened since, through notes, Polaroids, and tattoos. As we go along, we learn a variety of twists and revelations that would not be nearly as impactful if told chronologically. And the ending voiceover? Amazing. I also like how not everything is explicitly answered. I don't want to ruin the film, as I'd like for people to go in completely blind and let this mind-blowing viewing experience seep into your head as you watch it. But you can ponder so many things regarding Leonard's search when you finish the film. It's always been one of my favourite films, and hopefully it'll be one of your favourites too. Watch it if you haven't already. Back in February, we saw the first teaser for Shrek 5, which is set to be released in December 2026. Since doing a few videos on Shrek, as well as the book that inspired it, I wondered about a potential synopsis for the fifth film. The teaser drew a polarising response, with some criticising it for looking too different from the previous films, and others praising it for what they perceived as improvement in technology. I personally don't like the aesthetic. Above all, I think it looks far too clean, which contrasts with Shrek's grainy 3D art style, which was intended to contrast with Disney's clean 2D aesthetic. While doing my video answering if the film adaptation of Shrek was a great adaptation of the original book, I looked at the art style of the book, and pondered a potential storyline for the 5th film. What if the clean aesthetic we saw in the trailer was intentional? What if the storyline saw Shrek seeing everything as too polished all of a sudden, and he and Donkey ended up journeying into, you guessed it, a 2D world? Shrek utilised a grainy 3D art style to contrast with Disney's clean 2D art style. In the years since that film came out, Disney shut down their 2D studio, and have since stuck primarily to 3D, only bringing back 2D for certain projects. At this point, we have a grainy 3D art style, contrasting with a clean 3D art style. And Shrek is supposed to subvert fairytale tropes amongst other tropes, such as characters journeying into the real world. So, what if Shrek 5 served as the opposite to Disney's modern feature films, and, for the majority of its runtime, utilised a grainy 2D art style to contrast with Disney's clean 3D art style? I'd welcome an aesthetic based on the illustrations from the book with open arms. And DreamWorks Animation did do 2D animated films in their first few years. Remember the masterpiece that was The Prince of Egypt? Maybe Shrek and Donkey encounter the characters from the book, who fear the former, with Shrek being unsurprised on account of the former prejudice of the humans in his world. Along the way, the Shrek of that world accidentally stumbles into the clean 3D world, and dislikes the environment, and how everyone loves him. He uses his fire breath to terrorise the creatures of that world, who are surprised by what they perceive as different behaviour from their Shrek. Shrek and Donkey end up arriving at a castle. They journey inside and come across the princess from the book. The princess is smitten by Shrek's appearance, and is dismayed to find that he's married. Eventually, Shrek and Donkey find their way back to their world, only to find the former's evil counterpart terrorising everyone and causing damage. Shrek realises how his counterpart is more dangerous and indestructible than him, and enlists the dragon and the Dronkeys to fight him. Eventually they overpower him, and Shrek contemplates sending his counterpart back to his own world, but remains worried he will continue to terrorise the creatures of that world. Shrek shows his counterpart a mirror. The counterpart is initially horrified, believing it to be a similarly hideous creature, but regains his confidence when realising it's his reflection. Having had a sense of what it's like to be terrorised, the counterpart promises to improve for the better. Shrek remembers his encounter with the princess, and takes his counterpart back to his world to meet her. The counterpart and the princess become mutually smitten by their shared ugliness, and marry, with Shrek and his family and friends in attendance. All the while, there could be an explanation as to why Shrek's world looks too clean. It's being controlled by an evil black and white Mickey Mouse in another dimension, who wants to buy it out, and make it more in line with Disney's clean aesthetic. Shrek enlists his counterpart to confront Mickey, who tries to offer Shrek a huge sum of money to buy his world. But Shrek, not wanting to go down a path of greed like his past enemies, refuses. Mickey tries to kill them both, but Shrek throws red paint at him, resulting in authorities breaking in and arresting Mickey for copyright infringement. Shrek and his counterpart go back to their worlds, with Shrek's world maintaining its grainy aesthetic once again. If this was what happened, I'd be very surprised, but pleasantly. That said, if this is what the plot is, I think I deserve to be recognised as having prediction levels on par with The Simpsons. Well, I'm back with a new series, a limited series if you will. While films based on DC Comics have been around for decades, for a long period of time, there were no live-action films in which the characters crossed over. Warner Bros. Put together various plans, many including Batman and Superman crossing over, but none came to be. Until the 2010s, when they released a Superman reboot titled Man of Steel, and a follow-up and Batman reboot titled Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. From then until 2023, there were 13 more films released in this shared universe, titled the DC Extended Universe, to varying degrees of success. Some films were critical flops, some films were financial flops, some films were both, and some were neither. And although this franchise has come to an end, and been rebooted by James Gunn and Peter Safran, the question arises, is the DCEU, as a whole, a bad franchise? Well, in this series, I'll be looking at all 15 DCEU films, that's including the Snyder Cut and not the Whedon Cut, giving my thoughts on them individually, and then weighing them all up in terms of continuity, consistency in tone, and character development, and whether rebooting the franchise was the right decision. As I will cover the films in order of release date, it only makes sense to start with Man of Steel. So, here we go. Released in 2013, Man of Steel was the first film in the DCEU, and starred Henry Cavill in the titular leading role. You might wonder why I didn't refer to him as Superman, but I will get to this. An origin story for Superman, it sees alien Kal-El being sent from his home planet Krypton to Earth, and growing up to make the decision to help protect the world, which puts him into conflict with the last of his species, General Zod and his crew, who want to repopulate the Kryptonian species, even if it means wiping out the human race. Man of Steel is a more serious take on Superman than previous versions. If you're looking for a cheerful, upbeat film equivalent to Christopher Reeve smiling with his hands on his hips as he flies into the sunset, this may not be the film for you. However, this doesn't mean there isn't merit to it, and I'm going to get into the many things I love, and few things I dislike, about it. The film is very well set up, establishing Krypton being endangered, and Zod and Kal-El's father Jor-El having clashing ideas on how to save their race. To ensure his safety, Jor-El infuses Kal-El with the genetics codex, before sending him to Earth in a very poignant moment. For roughly the next 40 minutes of the film, we get a non-linear narrative, in which the story goes forward, while we learn about Kal-El's history. As a child, Kal-El landed in Kansas, was adopted by Jonathan and Martha Kent, and named Clark. As a child, Clark is shown to be overwhelmed by his powers, and not knowing how far they can go, and is seen as a freak. This scene in which he is able to see through everyone is not only really well edited, but also has a wholesome follow-up scene in which Martha gets Clark to come out of the closet, literally not figuratively, and showcases the superb performances from both Diane Lane and Cooper Timberline, as well as the wholesome relationship between the characters, which continues to be just that over the course of the film. As someone who is autistic, I also feel a connection with Clark being overwhelmed by so much happening at once, and how his reactions are seen as quote-unquote weird by others. Clark's relationship with Jonathan is quite a polarising aspect of the film, but I think it works really well with showcasing the conflicts Clark faces during his life, regarding whether or not he should save certain people. The conflict that comes with saving the kids on the school bus, and Jonathan telling him what could happen if he exposes his powers too early, showcases this very effectively. Jonathan also shows Clark the ship he came from, and the codex that came with it, making Clark realise he came from a different planet. Jonathan tells Clark he'll have to make a choice when he's older about whether or not to protect the world. This also results in Clark not fighting back against bullies, not only for the sake of keeping his powers secret, but also not wanting to hurt those who are physically weaker than him. Years later, Jonathan dies in a tornado as a result of refusing Clark's help. Jonathan still believed the world wasn't ready for Clark to expose his powers, and thus, saving Jonathan could have exposed his powers too early, thus making Clark an outcast even earlier, which is something he explains to Lois later on. It was also an early way of showing Clark that he couldn't save everyone. Following this, Clark travels the world under different aliases, seeking a purpose in life, and saving people in different ways along the way. Not only does it showcase Clark trying to save people without exposing himself, but it also has a scene where he emerges from fire without burning, which furthers my belief that we need a Deadpool and Wolverine spin-off about the Cavalry. At one point, Clark comes into conflict with a sadistic creep, and contemplates fighting back, but the woman being harassed convinces him not to. This showcases how Clark has inner thoughts of aggression, but chooses to restrain himself when he has the chance to, and with the advice of humans. This shows that while Clark is dedicating his life to helping people, certain people are also helping him to maintain his own sense of humanity in subtle ways. This shows that while Clark is trying to be heroic, he's not perfect, which makes him so much more interesting and relatable. And while this film is primarily serious, it has a funny moment every so often. As the creep leaves the bar, we see that Clark destroyed his truck. This genuinely made me laugh. An additional note is that it looks a bit like Optimus Prime. Let's be thankful Michael Bay wasn't involved, or this film would likely be action and explosions without emotional weight. But Clark's parents are not the only people he has emotionally gripping connections with. And with that, let's head to the next lane of praise. Eventually, journalist Lois Lane is assigned to investigate the discovery of a Kryptonian scout ship in the Arctic. Clark finds the ship and learns from its artificial intelligence, modelled after Jor-El.
Who are you?
I am your father.
About his origins, and that he was sent to Earth to help guide its people. Clark wears a blue and red uniform provided by the ship, which represents him choosing to help the residents of Earth, even though he's not yet at the point of embracing his role. The scene where he learns to fly feels like a genuine triumph, with the music, editing, cinematography and effects shining through. Lois discovers the aliens and wants to write a piece on it, only for her boss Perry White to dispute it, which is foreshadowing of the danger humans will face later on. In a lot of adaptations of the Superman story, Lois doesn't know Clark is Superman, and in a lot of cases where she does, Superman finds a way to erase it from her memory, however absurd it may be. Here, she figures it out very quickly, which brings something new and intriguing to their relationship, and initially considers exposing Clark and Kal-El as the same. She convinces Clark not to keep hiding, as this will prevent him from saving people. Clark explains to her that revealing himself would have made him an outcast, telling her about Jonathan's sacrifice, which convinces her to drop her story. Following Zod and his crew's escape from the Phantom Zone, Clark surrenders himself to the US military for Lois' safety. which strengthens their relationship and shows her belief in him and his regard for her safety. We also get a funny moment where Clark notes that he can see Emil's ID tag and half-eaten roll in his pocket. A lot of people interpret Lois as a damsel in distress, but in these films, she does save Superman quite a few times, and really does represent the key that Flash told Bruce about in Batman v Superman. In this film, not only does she refrain from exposing Clark and Kal-El as the same, but she also uploads the codex into the machine, thus giving her the ability to interact with Jor, and saving Clark. Later on, Jor's message to Clark about how he can save everyone makes him realise he can save Lois from the falling pod. So in that sense, Clark and Lois save each other. But, unfortunately, Clark couldn't save everyone. To me, General Zod is a great villain, and Michael Shannon plays him very well. His motivation to keep the Kryptonian race alive, and remorse over killing Jor-El, makes him empathetic. But wanting to keep the Kryptonians alive at the expense of humans is what makes him a villain. His transmitted message to the humans, ordering them to hand over Kal-El, is also genuinely suspenseful. We see the scene in which the young Clark is bullied and trying to refrain from fighting back. These years of being an outcast and developing uncertainty of trust in humanity give Clark a conflict when Zod demands humans hand him over. He speaks to a priest about the conflict, saying he can't maintain full trust in Zod or in humanity, and the priest advises him to make his own choice. It gives a good message about how you should do what you believe is right, rather than following the herd, but it also furthers how Clark is seeking aid in his human side. People are generally divided over Superman being a Jesus allegory in these films, and I do think it's a bit too on the nose at times, such as the stained glass mural of Jesus in the background. But, as a whole, I think it works for this take on Superman, and the way it's expanded on in Zack Snyder's subsequent DCEU films. It's also worth noting that Superman in the Christopher Reeve films was also written as an allegory for Jesus. I'm not sure if it's been explicitly confirmed, so don't take it as fact. But there is common discussion that Superman's creation was partly inspired by Moses, the Hebrew prophet who led the Jews out of Egypt. Both were placed in something to ensure their survival as an infant, they were adopted by people who were not like them, and grew up to use their powers to ensure the safety of innocent people, while having ties to where they came from, and where they grew up. In this film, Clark comes off as both an allegory of Moses, and an allegory of Jesus. I think it's fitting on account of how both Moses and Jesus were Jewish, as were Superman's creators Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Here, much of Clark's backstory has parallels with Moses, but his consideration of sacrificing himself for the safety of humanity has parallels with Jesus, and these will come further into play in the subsequent films. During Clark's fights with Zod, a lot of destruction is caused. This has been the subject of criticism, but I'd argue that, at this point, he is less experienced, and 99% of the destruction is caused by Zod and his army. During the final fight between Clark and Zod, Clark even goes out of his way to avoid crashing through buildings, showing that he is gradually figuring out how to fight Zod more safely moving along. When Zod tries to deploy his most powerful terraforming device, the World Engine, it severely damages Metropolis and risks humanity's extinction. Clark destroys the platform while the military launches an attack on the Black Zero, sending Zod's troops back to the Phantom Zone. Believing he has no purpose due to there being no further possibility of saving the Kryptonian race, Zod engages in a fight with Clark. There's common criticism of Clark fighting Zod on Earth, rather than trying to take him far away. But Zod doesn't want to fight Clark in space, he wants to fight him in the city, where he can not only destroy Earth and the human race, but also, from doing just this, force Clark to kill him. Clark even tries to take Zod into space, but Zod sends them both back down to Earth. Then we get the most infamous moment in the film.
If you love these people so much, you can mourn for them. Never.
A lot of people condemn Superman killing, and I have a ton of questions about that. A. How do you respond to Superman killing Zod, while smiling, in Superman 2, compared to Superman reluctantly killing Zod due to having no choice, in Man of Steel? B. Some say that Superman should have covered Zod's eyes, but if that happened, he'd have less strength to restrain Zod, giving him a better chance of overpowering Superman. C. Some say Superman shouldn't be written into situations where he's forced to kill. Well, firstly, how do you respond to the ending of The Dark Knight, where Batman is forced to kill Harvey Dent, and with a firmly established no-kill rule no less? And secondly, if you wanted Superman to never be forced to make difficult decisions, wouldn't that make him much more boring? I also think it's interesting, because it showcases further character development for Clark. He initially refrained from killing people because he didn't have to, but in this moment, Clark realizes that he has to kill Zod, and that he can't always exercise restraint in confronting enemies. After this very difficult decision, Lois arrives and consoles Clark, at this point, one of the only two people tying Clark to Earth and his sense of humanity, along with his mother Martha. If these two people get killed, Clark could go down a dangerous path, and believe me, he's not the only one. The film ends with Clark adopting the superhero alias of Superman, and persuades the government to let him act independently, on the condition he doesn't turn against humanity. For increased chance of investigating dangerous situations, he becomes a reporter for the Daily Planet. While a polarising film among many, I personally loved Man of Steel. It managed to do something different with Superman, that, in my opinion, managed to be very emotionally gripping, and showcased a believable depiction of Kryptonians in the real world, as well as a human and relatable depiction of Superman. I loved the cast, particularly Michael Shannon as General Zod. I loved Hans Zimmer's music, I loved the action scenes, and I loved the visual style. While the general response to DCEU films varies from film to film, I am looking forward to seeing what comes next. And chances are, I'll find the next one great too. So yeah, I know people who really like Mamma Mia, and I can sort of understand why. And I also know people who really hate this film, and I can definitely understand why that is. Mamma Mia is an awful film, both as a musical and as a story. I did not like this movie as a teen, but I've heard people say they think it's really good, and it made me wonder, really? So years later, I decided to go back and rewatch it, just to see if my mind changed. But honestly, it's as bad as I remember. I mean, saying you like a film is one thing. To say it's good is a harder argument to make. And in this case, I personally do not think either. There are films I enjoy, and I could not possibly say that they were good with a straight face. Those films are ironically enjoyable to me. And I've heard a certain number of people who liked Mamma Mia say they didn't think too much about the actual quality of the film. I mean, Mark Kermode said he enjoyed it, but that it was
the closest you're ever going to get to see A-list Hollywood actors basically doing drunken karaoke.
And honestly,
it's funny because it's true.
If you like Mamma Mia, or consider it a genuinely good film, that's fine. Opinions are opinions. But it just doesn't do it for me, and here's why. The writing is just so mind-numbingly stupid. The story exists because every character in this film is an idiot, to the point where Skye, a character we barely see, is probably the smartest. The blatant stupidity of these characters is honestly through the roof. The very idea of Sophie believing she'll know her dad when she sees him, is that a figure of speech? Because she takes it very seriously, even expressing surprise and disappointment when she doesn't recognise who her dad is. What the hell were you expecting? In fairness, there is a saying, I'll recognise them when I see them, but that's usually when you're trying to remember what someone looked like. But in Sophie's case, this would be impossible, because she's never met them. Donna is also very stupid, primarily in how she never once considers that Sophie invited her ex-boyfriends to the wedding, especially when there's no other potential suspect. She really couldn't consider telling a made-up story to Sophie about how 3 random men have shown up, which could lead to them talking things out. What's more, why does Donna have the addresses for 3 men she hasn't seen in 20 years? And at one point, she sings about the potential necessity of marrying a wealthy man, yet she never considers tracking down the men who might have fathered her daughter, despite having their addresses.
What have they ever done for their daughter? Donna, they didn't know she existed. Well, they didn't need to know, did they?
They would if they were to be there for her, Donna. The 3 dad candidates are pretty slow in picking up things as well. Sophie invited them all to her wedding, told them she was Donna's daughter, and they all described their encounters with Donna. And yet, it takes until Sophie's bachelorette party to figure out one of them as her father. It's pretty embarrassing that Skye, the fiancé we barely see, is the smartest character in the film. A character who, for some reason, bounces around a port in flippers with his pals. When we first see him, he hugs Sophie's friends to the bed. Bloody hell, Skye, you just got here. And Donna and her friends have a very weird fascination with how Skye intends to advertise their filler, by putting it on the internet. Have these people seriously never heard of the internet? But, to be fair, he pretty much scolds Sophie for not telling him she invited her dad candidates, and storms off. And I can't blame him, to be fair. Plus, this exchange is so stupid.
You invited these guys and you didn't tell me.
No, I thought you would try to stop me.
And why would you tell him at all, you big banana? Not to mention, they have this argument, which is one of the only scenes of chemistry they have, along with a pointless song that tells us what we already know. But then we never see them resolve their argument before the wedding. The exceptional mishandling of the cliché here is perhaps even worse than the mishandling of the lie reveal bit in A Bug's Life. And speaking of clichés, this film has a lot of them. To go over all of them would take forever, but Nostalgia Critic has already covered most of them, so I'll go with the main ones. Comic relief talking in union, dressing in silly clothes, the argument, and interrupting a wedding. Another one Doug brought up was be funny, but not really. And that can pretty much apply to this film. The comedy in this film is not funny. Rosie is one of the comic relief side characters, and we get this overlong joke of her falling off a boat. If you know anything about comedy, you'll know that the faster it is, the funnier it is. And this joke doesn't work because it's too slow and predictable. The reason Simon falling off the boat in the in-betweeners is funny is because it's not one joke, it's lots of smaller ones working off each other. In roughly the same amount of time, we get Simon trying to get a view of the sea, Jay and Neil capsizing the boat, Will deciding to turn around, and Simon falling in the sea. The four small pieces of comedy work off each other, and it becomes hilarious, which this does not. Stop replaying this clip. I'm tired of falling in the fucking water. Oh, okay.
I saved you!
I think the side plot about Rosie hitting on Bill is supposed to be comedic, but it's not funny, and it feels tagged on, just like a lot of things in this movie. We also get a side plot where Tanya has a fling with Sky's best man Pepper, who we barely see. Why are we focusing on this? How is this relevant to anything? And they have a song, which I will get to later on. So yeah, the writing for this film is awful. But that's okay, because the singing and song numbers are really good, right? Right? No, they're not. I was being sarcastic. Okay, not all the singing voices are terrible. Amanda Seyfried and Dominic Cooper are passable. And while Colin Firth sounds like Kermit the Frog doing a Michael Caine impression,
I can still recall our last summer.
His singing is probably the only ironic enjoyment I get from this film. Bless him for actually being interested in this film, which is more than I can say for a lot of the cast. I love Meryl Streep as an actress. Who doesn't? But this is not the performance she should be remembered for, because it is actually painful to watch her in this. When she acts or sings in this film, she always sounds like she's either drunk or being tortured. Though if she did decide to get drunk to do this film, I guess I can't blame her. But her singing is actually pretty good, compared to Pierce Brosnan. I have not heard a single person say they like Pierce Brosnan singing. He outstinks everyone in this movie, and critics drew several unfavourable comparisons in his singing, like comparing him to a wounded raccoon, or a donkey braying, or my personal favourite, sounding like he's being given a prostate exam off camera. If I was to add my own take on how awful his singing was, it would be sounding like he got kicked in the groin and had to sing out the pain. This is honestly one of the worst singing performances I've ever seen. This makes Emma Watson in Beauty and the Beast sound like Billie Eilish. So, the singing is overall pretty awful, especially from most of the leading singers, and the song numbers are honestly an embarrassment too. The whole point of a musical is to have the song and dance numbers move the story forward, and although a few song numbers in the film do work in the context of the story, particularly with Slipping Through My Fingers and Our Last Summer, most of them feel tagged on. One that my friends have tried to justify is Honey Honey, which they describe as introducing us to the characters. But it doesn't work, because if you removed it, you would have just as much exposition, as this all comes from the dialogue. All the song tells us is, Donna had sex and she liked it. And Sophie is strangely obsessed with her mum's sex life, literally squealing, ... I honestly wouldn't be surprised if she asked her mum this.
Anyway, how is your sex life?
Can you imagine Tommy Wiseau in this film? Oh hi Donna, I read your diary and the ... and I'm digging the shagging queen. Ahahaha. Okay, I went a bit off topic there, but so does this movie most of the time. Anyhow, in regards to the song telling us Donna had sex and she liked it, it doesn't even really work from that viewpoint, because of the 4 verses, only 2 are sung from the diary. The other 2 come out of nowhere, and at this point, Sophie is no longer reading from the diary, or talking about her mum's sexual encounters. She literally throws the diary to the sofa for the final verse. But that's just one song. Let's look at some of the other ones. Earlier I was talking about how the film is not funny. Well, as Doug has similarly mentioned, there is actually a moment in this film that has a very easy chance of succeeding. This being Donna discovering her ex-boyfriends together. But what do? They throw us into a song that not only has nothing funny in it whatsoever, as was intentional, but is also way too upbeat. You could very easily rewrite the scene without the song, and have Donna freak out loudly, which results in the boyfriends being conflicted, but deciding to investigate anyway because someone could be in danger. They go downstairs, discover Donna who freaks out again, tells them to leave, and then runs off. But that's just my idea on paper. It would also have to be executed well in order to be funny. We then get Tanya and Rosie trying to lift Donna's spirits by singing Dancing Queen, except the lyrics are kind of awkward given all the chaos of the situation, and the fact that towards the end, it ceases to be an intimate song between the 3 of them, and spills out into a huge crowd. After the song Our Last Summer, which actually does give proper exposition through song, as well as time spent between Sophie and her father candidates. It's followed up less than a minute later with a completely pointless and bloated song number. All this song tells us is, Sky and Sophie love each other. Whoa! Lucky you told me that, lay all your love on me. The fact that these two are about to get married was too subtle for me to grasp, and I never could have worked out that Sky and Sophie loved each other unless you were giving me this overlong, pointless song to clarify this. Plus, Sky's friends popping out the water and bouncing around the port in flippers? Totally an extra layer of clarification. And this is one of the last songs in the film, but I should look at The Winner Takes It All. Although people say it's supposed to be a metaphor for Donna realising she loved Sam after all, there's 3 major problems with it. The timing, the context, and the pacing. 1. Why is Donna singing the song when her daughter is about to get married? 2. The lyrics seem out of place, given that Sam didn't exactly take it all when he left. Yeah, he's had a good life, but look at what Donna ended up with. An island, a villa, 2 close friends, and a daughter that might be his. I think to say he took it all is a bit of a stretch. 3. The song goes on for far too long. Sophie's about to get married, and this song lasts 5 minutes. 5 fucking minutes! And it ends with this for some reason. And this isn't even the worst song inclusion in the film. The worst song inclusion is Does Your Mother Know? There is absolutely no reason for this song whatsoever. It doesn't even involve any main characters. It basically introduces this pointless side plot where Sky's best man Pepper is flirting with Tanya. Why are we focusing on this? And for 3 minutes no less. This is one of the worst paced films I've ever seen. I consider giving it the dishonour of being number 1 on that list, but then I remember that the Transformers sequels exist. So it's definitely a contender for number 2 if we include those films as one. So, this film features awful writing, pacing, comedy, singing, and choreography. But does the incredibly stupid conflict actually come to anything? No. So, after the wiener paces shit all, we get to the wedding. And of course, we have Donna and the 3 father candidates interrupt it. Totally haven't seen that before. And what does it come to? A DNA test? No, of course not. Sophie says she doesn't mind not knowing who her dad is. So she created this mind-numbingly stupid conflict, stressed Donna out a certain amount. And for what? For what? It didn't amount to anything more than a single drop in a limitless ocean. And this was not an ocean with a multitude of drops. It was an ocean with a multitude of stupidity and pointlessness. Well fucking done. Sophie also decides not to get married.
Sky, let's just not get married yet. Let's just get off this island and just see the world, okay?
You can't do that if you're married? Some would make the argument that Sophie and Sky decide to pass the wedding on to Donna and Sam. But you need a license for that. You can't just pass the license over. I titled this part of the video, The Ending, but I suppose I probably should have called it The Main Ending. Because this film has a lot of endings. The film tries to give every major character an ending, and somehow ends up having more endings than Return of the King, a film that was wrapping up the arcs of the characters in a 9-hour franchise, or a 12-hour one if referring to the extended editions. Not a sole 2-hour film. So, I guess I didn't get a whole lot out of this film overall, but there was one scene that stood out to me, amidst all the mud I had to squelch through. So, I mentioned that a few of the song numbers in Mamma Mia do enhance the story in some way. Our Last Summer actually provides insight into the time Donna spent with her ex-boyfriends 20 years before. Chiquita, kind of, features Tanya and Rosie singing to Donna when she's in despair. And SOS kind of shows a development in the rekindling of the romance between Donna and Sam, and in a much more fitting way than The Winner Takes It All. But there is one song, and sequence in particular, that does shine through, and is part of the reason I felt the film merited a 2 out of 10, rather than a 1 out of 10. And that is Slipping Through My Fingers. Through this song, Donna helps Sophie prepare for her wedding, and is acknowledging the great times they shared, while also accepting that her daughter has grown up, and is about to lead her own life with her main guy Sky. The scene lasts 4 minutes, but it actually warrants it. And although Meryl Streep's performance and singing for the majority of the film sound drunk, her singing here is actually okay. Plus, they paired her up with Amanda Seyfried, who is one of the few actors in the film who doesn't sing terribly. It's an emotionally gripping moment that the rest of the film could only dream of living up to. And if you've got to this point in the video, you're probably thinking, oh come on Ned, just lighten up and appreciate the enjoyment of the film. Well, in regards to this, I can't even get ironic enjoyment out of this film. Not only is this film a failure in terms of actual quality, but for me personally, it also fails to serve any fun or ironic enjoyment, except maybe Colin Firth. The film is so melodramatic that it becomes much more annoying than enjoyable, and I do question why everyone is this carefree the day before a wedding. I've mentioned that I find the stupidity of the characters annoying. If this was played for laughs, like in say, The Simpsons or Spaceballs, then it could be funny, but you're supposed to take these scenes seriously, which just makes it annoying. The film feels more like an ABBA playlist than a coherent, well thought out film, but it honestly fails in this regard too, because most of the actors in the film can't carry a tune to save their lives. Which is a bigger reason I can't enjoy how bad the film is. And I like ABBA music, I just don't like the covers that the film provides. Watching this film is like showing up to a party you weren't invited to. Everyone is having fun inside, and you're just watching from outside, maybe pressing your nose against the window while doing so. The characters in this film probably have a blast, but unlike a movie like Mary Poppins, I just don't feel like I'm experiencing the fun with the characters. It's just kind of empty. So yeah, I couldn't find much to like with this film. I can see why people like it, and it's not particularly harmful or insulting, but regardless, I just can't stand it. And this is how I can easily resist Mamma Mia.
Yeah, there it is! There it is!
Released 50 years ago, Fawlty Towers is one of, if not my favourite sitcom. As much as I love Father Ted and the Inbetweeners, I think Fawlty Towers is funnier than both. And this is mostly due to John Cleese and Connie Booth's phenomenal writing, as well as Cleese's masterfully comedic acting. Although it only lasted 2 seasons and 12 episodes, it's widely regarded as one of the greatest sitcoms of all time, and one that never experienced seasonal rot. It really was a quality over quantity show. So, let's check in and rank every episode of Fawlty Towers, starting with... This episode does a superb job of introducing the main characters, particularly Basil Fawlty himself, who is showcased as snobby, aggressive, and disorganised, and someone who sees upper-class guests as superior, as well as being abusive to his waiter Manuel. Manuel is established as a Spanish waiter struggling to understand English, such as misunderstanding an instruction to throw away a slice of lemon, and who is mistreated by Basil, even for things that are not his fault. In regards to the rest of the episode, the revelation of the Lord being a con artist is a funny outcome, especially when Basil thoroughly examines the bricks. And Basil trying to hang up the picture, only to break it in frustration, is a hilarious outcome. A great start overall. Even better than the first episode, manages to be even funnier, while fleshing out characters even more. My favourite moments are when Basil freaks out over what happened while he was gone, and when Manuel tries to communicate with the builders, but accidentally insults one of them by calling him an orangutan. Looking forward to what comes next. These episodes just keep getting funnier. This one manages to be frequently hilarious, and involves all kinds of mishaps, including Basil inadvertently misleading Sybil into believing he's having an affair with a flirtatious guest, who he's actually trying to shoo off. Also, Basil being annoyed by Sybil saying, "Oh, I know," over and over, is iconic. Manuel's birthday mishaps are also brilliant, such as leaving when Basil thought he had, continuing his speech outside, getting drunk and not only startling Basil, but also being unable to serve properly during the day, and Basil mistaking him for a thief and knocking him out, with returning guests misunderstanding the situation. Basil's rant when realising the guests are all related, and Polly's been friends with them for years, is just iconic. I don't think I'll ever get tired of Basil's rants and freakouts, and John Cleese's delivery makes them 10 times funnier. A funny episode. Not as funny as the first 3 episodes, but it does have an interesting plotline where Basil alternates between which guests he treats more respectfully, believing any one of them could be the hotel inspector. The climax, in which Basil gets into a fight with Mr. Hutchinson, only to realise who's witnessed it, and that abrupt scream in response, is just amazing, and possibly the best ending in the series. Bernard Cribbins guest stars as Mr. Hutchinson, and he makes the character so annoyingly entitled, and thus, watching both him and Basil get the bad end of the stick by the end, just makes it all the more satisfying and hilarious. Another hilarious episode that gets funnier as it goes along. All the hassle that comes from the chef getting drunk is not only hilarious, but also my argument for why alcohol is the invention of Satan. And the scene of Basil's car getting stranded on the pavement, and Basil hitting it with a tree, is obviously iconic. So much that John Cleese brought it back, and still came off as Basil Fawlty even decades later. Understandably the most popular episode in the series. Everyone remembers Basil failing to avoid mentioning the war around the Germans. But the stuff before the Germans arrive, and what leads to Basil being hit over the head, is also brilliant. With the guest's misconceptions with the alarm, and Basil getting increasingly frustrated with Sybil's phone calls, being comedic gold, as well as the Major thinking the moose is talking to him, and the way it comes back at the end. However did we win? Another hilarious episode. Watching Basil try to hide the money he won in a bet from Sybil, while dealing with an entitled guest who loses £85, is simultaneously hysterical and stressful. Some of the funniest moments include Basil trying to mime the name of the horse to Polly, Manuel catching on that he knows nothing, the Major not catching on to how Basil gave him the money and he returned it, and then only catching on and explaining it in front of everyone, and Basil's hatred of the entitled guest. Another case where you want both Basil and the guest to get what's coming to them. Another brilliant episode. Watching chaos ensue as Basil tries to catch a female guest he knows has snuck in, only to end up causing chaos with married doctors and a younger Australian woman, which gets him into trouble with Sybil, is just hilarious. And the ending is just the icing on the cake. This is a good episode. It doesn't have any hilarious moments like the episodes that came before it, but I do always enjoy Basil launching into tirades, and these come close to hilarity. As it is, it's a funny episode. Another brilliant episode. Watching Basil, Manuel and Polly try to hide a corpse from the guests leads to many brilliant dilemmas, including an old woman who mistakes the situation for murder, a doctor waiting for his sausages, and an entitled woman and her aggressive dog, which leads to a phenomenal ending in which Basil manages to escape the dire situation. Manuel's misunderstandings are probably at their best here too, and him trying to quit is also hilarious. This is a good episode. Watching Basil get Polly to pretend to be Sybil, and Manuel and the chef fighting over the paella dish, are the best parts of the episode. While it's not as funny as other episodes, it is nice to see Basil trying to do something nice for Sybil for once, even if, as expected, everything goes horribly wrong. A great finale to the series. This is a rare instance where Manuel is primarily at fault for what goes wrong, as the staff try to get rid of his rat, while Manuel tries to find it, leading to a brilliant ending with the health inspector, and, with it being the last episode, makes you wonder if he did shut down the hotel or not. Long live Fawlty Towers. When the strongest episode is a 10 out of 10, and the weakest is still a 7 out of 10, you know you've got a great series. So, let's get on to the final ranking. At number 12, we have Waldorf Salad, The Anniversary, The Hotel Inspectors, A Touch of Class, Basil the Rat, The Builders, Gourmet Night, The Psychiatrist, Communication Problems, The Wedding Party, The Kipper and the Corpse, The Germans. And with that, happy anniversary, Fawlty Towers. In 2019, Warner Bros. Released a psychological thriller film titled Joker, which drew inspiration from several Batman stories, as well as the works of Martin Scorsese, and seemed to be an origin story for Batman's arch-nemesis, the Joker. It was a critical and commercial success, becoming the first R-rated film to make over $1 billion worldwide, and even received a Best Picture nomination at the Oscars. In 2024, they released a jukebox musical sequel, and it was a critical and commercial flop. Safe to say there will not be any more films in this franchise. But, did Joker deserve its success? And did Joker Folie à Deux fucking deserve its failure? Well, let's take a look at both. While the general response to Joker has been quite polarising, I personally love the film. I can definitely see why some people compare it to films like Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy. And, while I do consider those films superior, I don't see Joker as a copy of them, but rather, inspired by them, including the obvious homage in Robert De Niro's role as talk show host Murray Franklin. Elements of Arthur's character arc and personality can be seen as inspired by Travis Bickle and Rupert Pupkin, including his mental state sending him down a dangerous path, and his delusions while pursuing a career as a comedian. And while I love the commentaries that Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy go for, I do also love what Joker aims for. Joker serves as a commentary on the dangerous path mentally ill people can go down if neglected and mistreated by society. Our protagonist Arthur Fleck has spent a lifetime being abused by different people in different ways, This is effectively shown in the opening, where he is assaulted by street youths while working, but also through him being unable to get medication for his laughing disorder, something he is openly mocked for, being screwed over by his boss and colleagues, and learning of his mother Penny allowing her boyfriend to abuse him as a child. The spark that prompts Arthur to seek revenge on those who wronged him is when he is beaten up by the Wall Street bullies on the subway and fatally shoots them all. Finally feeling a sense of control, he goes down a dangerous path and takes revenge on those people, including Penny and his colleague Randall. Although Randall did try to help Arthur by giving him a gun for protection, him claiming that Arthur tried to buy other guns off him, which he gained absolutely nothing from saying, and berating fellow colleague Gary for his dwarfism, ultimately make him a certified cunt. When Arthur gets fired, he walks down the stairs and kicks the door open, done in anger due to the end of his clown job. He then does the same kick while dancing down the stairs to his apartment, done in celebration of his plan to kill himself on live TV. While these two moments symbolise a seemed closing chapter in Arthur's life, the dance down the stairs is subverted when Arthur kills Murray instead of himself. Arthur envisions a relationship with neighbour Sophie. The revelation of this being imaginary is implied many times, including when she says she believes the killer of the Wall Street Men is a hero. With that said, I do find the execution of the revelation a bit jarring, in which they show all the scenes with Sophie how they were actually playing out. I was kind of thinking to myself, yeah, we get it, they were all imaginary. He also learns of Penny's former association with billionaire Thomas Wayne, and believes Thomas could be his father. Although Thomas denies it, and the documents Arthur steals seem to prove his statements to be true, there are certain theories surrounding this that I intend to get into later on. Although the film succeeds in making Arthur empathetic, on account of his lifetime of mistreatment and neglect, and initial desire to bring joy to those around him, it also makes it clear that he does become a villain, albeit a tragic one. You feel sorry for him for most of the film, and distraught when his mental illness sends him down a murderous and revenge-driven path. Additionally, while Murray didn't deserve to die, and this can further Arthur's sense of immorality that makes him a villain, he does understandably end up on Arthur's bad side by openly mocking his stand-up show, and later continues to mock him in person on the show. Even when Arthur talks about the dangerous path he went down as a result of society's neglect and mistreatment of him, and says he killed the men on the subway because they were awful, and then calls Murray awful, rather than taking the hint and running for his life, Murray continues to keep Arthur on the show, with the thought of potentially winning an Emmy overshadowing the thought of Arthur killing him right there. And what do you know? Arthur delivers a joke that literally blows Murray's mind. Arthur had longed to gain recognition in life through becoming a successful comedian. Although he gains recognition by the end of the film, albeit not in the way he intended, it ultimately stems from the dangerous path he went down, and further cements how the film isn't glorifying violent people, but rather showing how violent people are created. Despite being a rather sad drama, the film does have some genuinely funny moments, such as when Arthur literally punches out, and when he kills Randall and casually tells Gary he's going to be on the Murray Franklin show that night. One thing most of us can agree on is how amazing Joaquin Phoenix's performance is. He manages to convey the initial kindness and subsequent increasing insanity in Arthur, as well as showing subtleties in the way he laughs, whether it be a desire to cry, a way of saying fuck you to Randall, or a genuine laugh when shooting Murray, and details such as his legs shaking when nervous or overwhelmed in a situation. A well-deserved Oscar for this role, and honestly, one of the best performances I've seen in any film ever. Something else that stands out about this film is the cinematography and colour palette. Even though the film is predominantly bleak colours, matching the tone, every shot manages to be visually stunning, and the film also embodies brighter colours when appropriate, such as in Arthur's clown makeup and outfit, representing his desire to bring joy, and in the set of Murray's talk show, representing a masked sense of joy. Another strong standout is the amazing score by Hilda Gudnadottir, and how it showcases the bleak and dire society Arthur lives in, and at other points builds up suspense, such as when Arthur is about to shoot Murray. It notably adds to the scene in which Arthur slowly dances after killing the Wall Street bullies, showing him processing many thoughts at once upon doing so. Something else that stands out about this film is how, when you look at it on its own, the theories presented are interesting ones, and most of them are connected to pre-existing Batman characters, most notably Thomas and Bruce Wayne. One theory suggests that Arthur is merely the inspiration for the Joker, stemming from him being at least 30 years older than Bruce. Thanks to the second film, this is no longer a theory, but I'll get to that later. Another theory suggests that Thomas is indeed Arthur's father, and this claim has credibility. The file Arthur stole states that Penny was a delusional narcissist who adopted Arthur while working for the Waynes, and imagined a relationship with Thomas, in which Arthur was their biological son. But there is a possibility that Thomas used his fortune to fabricate the documents to avoid a scandal. It is worth noting that when Arthur meets Thomas, Thomas immediately denies being his father. Although, There is a possibility that Thomas saw through Penny's delusions, and speculated that she had told Arthur about him. If I talked about this theory incredible or not, I'd say yes to it being credible, but that's merely based on what we see in the film, and I wouldn't rule out the possibility that Thomas was telling the truth to Arthur. That said, I do like how the film doesn't explicitly confirm everything. Penny could be fabricating her encounters with Thomas, but they could also be true. Another theory suggests that the ending in which Arthur is in Arkham takes place decades later, when Arthur has become the Joker, and Bruce has grown up to become Batman, and finally brought him to Arkham. Even when looking at this film alone, however, I find this to be unlikely, mainly because Arthur looks exactly the same. And then we have the second film that debunks the theory, but again, I will, most unfortunately, get to that film. And speaking of the film's connections to Batman, I think they work quite well. I like when Arthur meets Bruce while the latter is playing on a climbing frame, and he slides down a pole, which is more than likely an homage to the Batman TV series. I think it's interesting how Thomas says that those who hide behind a mask are cowards. It makes you wonder if this universe's Bruce would end up becoming Batman. We never see any suggestion of Bruce's fear of bats in this film, and his father calls people who hide behind masks cowards. So it makes you wonder if Bruce would end up becoming Batman, or if he would find a different way to honour his parents' memory. And finally, I think the death of Bruce's parents is interesting. I can understand someone being annoyed by it, not just on account of how we've seen it so many times, but also because it's not Batman's story, and thus we supposedly wouldn't need to see it. With this said, I think it works in the context of its inclusion in this film. On the same night that Arthur embraces his Joker persona, one of the clowns murders Thomas and Martha, thus indicating that Batman and Joker were born on the same night. Many iterations of Batman indicate that Batman completes the Joker, but this film states that the Joker, inadvertently, created Batman, thus creating the persona that would come to complete him, and both were created on the same night no less. So, as a whole, I think Joker is a great film. It's definitely a different take on the Joker than previous versions, but I think it works for what it is, coming off as a darkly insightful commentary on how violence is created, and aided by phenomenal acting from Joaquin Phoenix, a welcomely unsettling score, and stunning cinematography. The film made over $1 billion worldwide, and received many Academy Award nominations, and, most especially with Phoenix's Best Actor win, I'd say it got what it deserved. And now let's get on to the other film in this franchise. Much of Joker Folie à Deux can be summed up in one word: filler. Before I get on to the main and most obvious examples, I'm going to mention the film's excessive tracking shots. Rather than just cutting to scenes, they instead show tracking shots of the characters making the journey. Cause you gotta have a Scorsese homage somewhere, I guess. But also, a lot of the film consists of scenes that recap the events of the first film. Remember when Arthur killed the men on the subway? Remember when Arthur killed Murray Franklin? Remember when Gary witnessed Arthur murder Randall? Remember when Arthur thought he had a relationship with Sophie? Do you remember them? Because whether or not you do, this film is gonna bonk you on the head with them over and over again. You might as well just be rewatching the first one. A lot of other scenes in the film are just filler musical numbers. I was rather skeptical when I heard the film would be a musical, given how grounded in realism the original was. The film's song numbers take place in Arthur and Lee's fantasies. There's God knows how many. And, like most jukebox musicals, they don't enhance the story at all, and they just make the same point. Arthur and Lee are in a relationship built on delusion. Speaking of Lee, or shall I say, Harley Quinn, she's introduced in this film, and shown to be fascinated by the Joker. Not Arthur, the Joker. Now this could take an interesting direction, in which Lee convinces Arthur to leave behind his Arthur persona in favour of fully embracing his Joker persona for good. This does not happen, as Arthur decides to renounce his Joker persona, which results in her leaving him. This plot point in particular is the moment where everything in both these films comes crashing down. It makes them both pointless. Arthur went from becoming the Joker to renouncing the persona and ending up a mistreated outcast again, thus undoing all his character development in the first film. This approach also makes Lee completely pointless to the story, as she has no impact on Arthur's final decision, and has the exact same mindset as many of Joker's followers, loving Joker, but not giving two shits about Arthur. The first film faced some controversy, due to accusations of celebrating violence and glorifying Arthur's actions. In my opinion, Todd Phillips listened way too much to these people, as shown by him trying to depict Arthur as sad and pathetic in the climax. This, ironically, makes me feel worse for him, as he abandons his split personality and takes full responsibility for his actions, only to end up losing everything as a result, including his life. The scene in which Arthur gets killed by the inmate, thus indicating there's no chance of fixing the problems with this film, is just an even bigger nail in the coffin than Arthur's closing argument. My interpretation of the film is that it wants to be a commentary on how society loves Joker and not Arthur, but the way the film conveys it completely undoes everything in the first film, which was a great film on its own, kind of conveyed that point in its own way, and didn't need a sequel. Another problem I have with Joker Folie à Deux is how, unlike the first film, Arthur is the only one who faces consequences for his actions. He's continually mistreated by the prison guards, even gang raped by them, gets rejected by Lee after renouncing his Joker persona, and gets stabbed to death by an inmate. None of these characters face any karma for their actions. Now granted, Arthur shouldn't have killed the people who wronged him in the first film, but the film served as a commentary on how the mistreatment and neglect of the mentally ill can lead to dangerous situations. While Arthur was wrong to kill Randall and Murray, you do also kind of want to see them get some kind of karma for the way they treated him, just not killed. And the fact that everyone who mistreats Arthur in this film gets away with it, as well as Arthur's remorse over having the Joker persona and taking full responsibility for his actions, further undermines the aforementioned commentary of the first film. At most, this film's commentary is pretty much, yeah, mentally ill people kill each other. So, it's mostly a boring, insulting, and pointless sequel. But, despite all its bad qualities, it ain't all bad. The animated sequence at the beginning is pretty awesome, serving as a parody of Looney Tunes with a memorable art style, and more or less embodies what the whole film is about, but in an actual interesting way. This honestly should have been a standalone animated short film. Although the film is over-reliant on overlong tracking shots, it does maintain the already amazing cinematography from the first film, but to an even higher degree, with notable standouts being the shots of Arthur entering the courtroom, and when he comes into position with the smile Lee draws on the glass. I honestly wonder how long it took them to perfect this shot. Mwah! There's also a highly impressive tracking shot from Arthur waking up from the court explosion, being guided to a car by two followers, and leaving the car and running away. If this wasn't filmed in one take, then it certainly looks like it was, and must have been very difficult to accomplish. It really says something when CinemaSins was willing to take office-in for it, despite their overall negative opinion of the film. Joaquin Phoenix's performance as Arthur is still great. He doesn't necessarily bring anything new to the performance, but it's consistent, despite his singing not being all that. The rest of the cast are also good, with Lady Gaga giving it her all as Harley Quinn. And, honestly, you can't go wrong with Brendan Gleeson. Too bad their talent is being wasted on this. And yet, while I don't believe Phoenix and Gaga's performances to be a problem, I do believe them to be partially responsible for where the film fails. While Scott Silver and Todd Phillips are credited as the sole screenwriters, not only was it Phoenix's idea to turn it into a musical, but also, Gaga and Phillips would meet with him in his trailer and rewrite parts of the script during production. So even if I don't think Phoenix and Gaga should have received Razzie nominations for their performances, I can understand them picking up a worst screen combo nomination on account of them rewriting the script, and probably being partially responsible for their lack of on-screen chemistry. In order to determine whether or not they should have won, I would need to watch the other nominees. So, I've given my thoughts on Joker Folie à Deux, but how would I write it if I had to? I would have Joker 2 be the film in which Arthur fully embraces the Joker persona. While at Arkham, he meets Harley, with whom he forms an unhealthy connection. Due to Harley not being a prisoner, she's much less under the watchful eye of the prison guards than Arthur, and is able to pull off many antics undetected that lead to them both fleeing. And at one point, the two have sex in his cell. During Arthur's trial, the courtroom explodes, and two followers help Arthur and Harley escape. They take them far away from Gotham, with the two intending to return with unrecognisable fashion traits. During this, Harley finds out she's pregnant with Arthur's baby. This could then pave the way for a follow-up in which their child follows in his parents' footsteps, and becomes the Joker that the now adult Bruce Wayne fights as Batman. Or alternatively, my treatment could be the setup, leading to a second act in which their kid is born, and they raise him to become the new Joker, and the one that Batman goes face to face with. Whether or not you like my treatment, at least it doesn't make the first Joker completely redundant. There is at least progress with the story, rather than just an insulting slap in the face. Alas, as it is, Joker Folie à Deux is completely redundant, and an insulting slap in the face. It's still technically brilliant, and well acted, but it's also a boring, insulting, bloated, and pointless viewing experience, with nothing profound to say. I'll end this analysis with a joke. What do you get when you cross a pointless sequel with a $200 million budget? You get what you fucking deserve. Disneytoon Studios, a division of Walt Disney Animation Studios that was active for 28 years and produced many films. And yet, only 9 qualify for this video. Yeah, for this video, I'll only be including the wide theatrical release Disneytoon films, I contemplated doing their direct-to-DVD Disney sequels first, but I found that there were a lot to get through, and some of them were just draining. So, I put it on hold, and decided to do this one instead. I'll get back to watching the direct-to-DVD sequels eventually. #pray for me. But, in terms of what's included in this ranking, I'm not including limited releases like Bambi 2, which I'll cover when I do the aforementioned ranking, or the Tinkerbell movies. Don't ask me when I'll talk about those. It also, obviously, rules out direct-to-DVD films, most of which I'll talk about in the aforementioned sequel ranking video. Again, don't ask me when I'll talk about the rest of them. And so, looking at the ones that qualify, it's a mixed bag overall. Their best films are a 7 out of 10, and the worst are a 2 out of 10. So there is at least something to appreciate in each of these films, even a certain one where I lost interest about 5 minutes in. But, let's rank the theatrical Disneytoon films. A lot of people claim Cars 2 was made purely to sell merchandise. And, while my opinion on Cars 2 has changed since the Pixar ranking, and I do consider it a bad film, it doesn't come off as lazy or uninspired to me, and it is at least interesting. And then there's Planes, which is lazy and uninspired, and also boring, and clearly just a feature-length toy commercial. You can tell even more so because the animation is the only good part of the film, and I suppose the music is decent, even if it sometimes sounds too similar to How to Train Your Dragon. Not only is the film just a blatant copy of Cars, but it's dull as hell. The characters never shut up, and this makes the film especially dull, and made me pray for it to end as early as 5 minutes in. And, judging by how much most of the voice actors phoned it in, I imagine they were praying for it to end too. Can't say I blame them. Dusty is a protagonist with a fear of heights. The outcome is exactly what you'd expect. I'm really struggling for things to say. This film lacks the emotional depth of Cars and Cars 3, and the intriguing bizarreness of Cars 2. It's honestly one of the most boring films I've ever seen. Overall, an improvement over Spirit Untamed, because at least the animation is good. Moving on. The original script for The Jungle Book 2 would have been about Baloo saving his love interest from a poacher. I wish that was the script Disney went with, instead of this meandering nostalgia-baiting rehash of the original. There's not a lot to say about the majority of The Jungle Book 2, because most of it is just filler songs, scenes that exist purely to remind you of the original, or treading on the jarring liar reveal trope. Above all, the first film ended perfectly, and there was no need to continue the story. Having Mowgli long for the jungle ruins his arc, and the message of the first film, accepting change and responsibility, and realizing where you belong. I also think his adoptive father apologizing sends a bad message, given that Mowgli was putting the kids in danger by trying to lead them to the jungle. The animation is a mixed bag for me. I do like the backgrounds, and the designs of the human characters, but the designs of the animals is such a downgrade. And the colour palette is rather inconsistent with the original, which is inexcusable in animation, particularly with Kaa, a character who serves absolutely no purpose here. I do think Shere Khan still presents a genuine threat, and Tony Jay is perfectly cast. Him mauling Lucky the Vulture is genuinely intense, as is him chasing Mowgli and Shanti during the climax, even if it ends before it can properly sink in. Most of the rest of the voice cast are decent. Jim Cummings is obviously perfectly cast as Kaa, given it's the same voice as Winnie the Pooh. And Bob Jones is a decent replacement as Bagheera. John Goodman does bring an energetic performance to Baloo, even if he sounds far too different to Phil Harris. And then there's Haley Joel Osment, who was clearly just cast for star power, sounding nothing like Mowgli in the original film, and sounding rather annoying. A lot of Disney sequels, whether theatrical or direct-to-DVD, are unnecessary. Some are bad, and some are lazy. And The Jungle Book 2 falls into the category of lazy, and fails to bring anything new to the series, or expand on the original in any way. It's not as infuriating as Ralph Breaks the Internet or Mulan 2, but it's worse, on account of lacking any originality, or making me feel anything at all for the most part. Just skip it. Planes, Fire and Rescue is an improvement on Planes, but that's not saying much. It maintains the good animation of the first film. Some of the music goes pretty hard, even if it sometimes sounds too similar to Chicken Run. And the film is less reliant on excessive talking than the first film, utilising some largely silent flying scenes, as well as the montage of Dusty flying off. And I think Dusty abandoning racing to help with firefighting is an interesting development. And that's it for positives. After the first 30 minutes, I lost interest, and I remember very little other than the part where the siren sounded like a fart, which was not funny, and the red cars on the cop show basically being Mia and Tia. I do remember the scene going black during a fire. Everyone died. The end. No, seriously, you don't have to watch the film to check. I'm being 100% serious about this. It's honestly a relief that the Planes franchise ended here, an even bigger relief that this is the last bad film in this ranking. The rest range from mediocre to good. So, let's move on to the next one. Return to Neverland is just as visually appealing as the original Peter Pan, and Smee is still funny, and yet it feels too similar to the original Peter Pan. At certain points it comes off as nostalgia baiting, mainly in the beginning. And Jane's arc regarding her initial disbelief in faith and magic, yeah, you can guess exactly how that will play out. The octopus that butts heads with Hook is pretty much just the crocodile again, and it becomes a lie revealed story in the third act. And there isn't much to say beyond this. A watchable and beautifully animated film, but doesn't bring enough to the series to justify its existence. Moving on. This is the only piece of DuckTales media I've ever seen. If it's a faithful adaptation of the TV series, I don't know if I'm intrigued or not, because as a whole, it's pretty mediocre. The film is kind of boring a lot of the time, with the genie being far less entertaining than in Aladdin. But it's not bad by any means. The animation and voice acting are good, and there's the odd funny moment, including the havoc from the wishes for the baby elephant, and the toys coming to life. Oh, and this line.
He's a genie!
Does his mother know about this?
And it has a somewhat poignant, and somewhat funny ending. As a whole, it's not bad, but I can't see myself revisiting it. But the 5 out of 10 is closer to a 6 than a 4. Piglet's Big Movie is decent. The animation is good, as is the cover of Winnie the Pooh and Ina Kleiner Nap music. The music when Pooh sees the illustration of Pooh Corner, and regrets not calling it Pooh and Piglet Corner, is genuinely sad. And the way the stories all come together at the end is creatively animated, as they draw out their encounters with Piglet, with him as the hero. Oh, and Pooh contemplating honey over his life is comedically believable. And yet, some of the characters feel miswritten. It seems out of character for the others to believe Kanga and Roo were initially a threat. It does reach a heartwarming outcome, but I don't think it's a lesson they needed to learn. I also think Pooh deciding to name the area Pooh Corner, instead of Pooh and Piglet Corner, is kinda douchey, even if he does have a change of heart at the end. And the climax is rather cliched, with Piglet's return being rather abrupt, and the film using the fake-out death with Pooh and Piglet. And it ends with a party, because of course it does. A flawed, but decent film overall, that does have good messages, even if they come at the expense of occasional, mild character assassination. The Tigger movie is also decent. It does have its fair share of good moments, with some funny moments including the opening, Pooh, Piglet and Eeyore mistaking frogs for tigers, and Pooh trying to sing the bees to sleep, even if this goes on a bit too long. I also like Tigger's songs about loneliness and bouncing, and his song about what he believes to be the history of his family is visually creative. And Tigger's friends dressing up as Tiggers when he believes they're coming to see him is wholesome, even if it does take a lie-revealed path. This is where the tropes and predictability start to kick in, with Tigger leaving and the others going out to find him, and a predictable, albeit good, message about family not necessarily being in blood. I also question why everyone got annoyed at Tigger for moving the boulder at the beginning. Yeah, he destroyed Rabbit's rock remover and caused everyone to get muddy, but he still moved the boulder. If the third act was as good as the first two, I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10. As it is, it's a 6 out of 10, but definitely closer to a 7 than a 5. And here we have the best of the Disneytoon theatrical Pooh films, and even though it's called Pooh's Heffalump movie, it's more of a Roo story than a Pooh story. Yes, I am aware that this is probably for marketing, and Roo is less popular than Tigger or Piglet, but it's still a bit of a misleading title. Hashtag justice for Roo.
Actually, it had a little less poo in it.
Perfectly sums up this film, and perfectly doesn't sum up Taco Bell toilets. I remember seeing the trailer for this on the Incredibles DVD as a kid, and looking back, I feel like it would have worked better to not show the Heffalump in the trailer, thus making the revelation of what they look like a surprise. This said, the friendship between Roo and Lumpy is wholesome, and I like how Lumpy's mum is established, and then comes back into play when Lumpy summons her to save Roo. Though I do find it hard to gloss over how Pooh, Rabbit, Tigger and Piglet were fully intent on choking Lumpy to death. Bit dark, innit? The music goes really hard in this one. The Heffalump song is creative visually, and nice to listen to. The song about Roo is wholesome, and the music as he hops out into the forest is quite good, as well as when Lumpy is despondent over not being able to find his mum. And the closing songs are really good. It's not amazing, nor was I expecting it to be, and it doesn't live up to the Winnie the Pooh movies from the main studio, but it has enough good stuff to warrant a 7 out of 10. This said, I do have to question where Al was the whole film. Even Christopher Robin came back at the end. A Goofy movie is wholesome. It's nothing amazing, nor was I expecting it to be, but most of the film can be summarised as good. I like Goofy and Max's arcs of learning to appreciate each other, with Goofy coming to respect Max's boundaries and accept he's growing up, and Max coming to acknowledge that Goofy just wants to maintain a bond with his son. I also find their song on the river, as well as the ending, quite touching. Speaking of the songs, I like them overall. There's a lot of genuinely funny moments as well. Bigfoot's antics get a genuine laugh out of me. I love the principal's disturbing prediction of Max's future, suggesting he could end up in the electric chair. That's dark as shit and I love it. And yet, the film does go down a liar-revealed path, with Goofy realising Max changed the map. And yeah, the outcome is quite predictable, even if it does lead to the touching song on the river. Speaking of which, I'm convinced Damon and Ian saw this film, and took inspiration for the In-Betweeners. Think about it. A yellow car that looks like a Fiat Cinquecento that ends up in a river? Yep, a Goofy movie may not be amazing, but due to my headcanon that it gave the In-Betweeners some inspiration, I'm glad it exists, purely on account of that. And on a serious note, it's a good film as a whole, and the best wide-release theatrical Disneytoon film. Released 30 years ago, Toy Story is one of the most acclaimed animated films, and also one of the most important films of all time. Not only the first Pixar feature film, but also the first feature film to be animated entirely with CGI. And it's also a great film all around, with a witty, sophisticated script, intriguing characters, superb voice acting, memorable music, and of course, fantastic animation. But what truly makes Toy Story great? Well, let's get into this. While Toy Story wasn't the first film to use CGI, or even the first film to be done entirely with it, it was the first feature film to be done entirely with CGI. Feature films such as Tron, and short films such as Pixar's Oscar-winning Tin Toy, paved the way for Toy Story. While Tin Toy is a pretty good short film, it's safe to say, that baby looks awful. Although you could also say that adds to it being a threat to Tinny. But anyway, Disney took note of Tin Toy, and went on to help Pixar make Toy Story. So, as nightmare fueled as Tin Toy may have been for many, it did contribute to the creation of an acclaimed film and franchise. I just want to say that a film being groundbreaking doesn't make it automatically good. I've seen Tron twice, and yeah, I don't particularly like it. I find the story rather dull and incoherent, and while the CGI probably looked cool when it first came out, the shots with the humans look absolutely horrible today. I simply don't believe that these characters are trapped in a computer game, and while 3D human designs were probably unachievable at the time, I can't see any reason why they couldn't make the humans within the game 2D animated. I do think the shots without the humans look pretty cool, and they do give the vibe of the graphics in 80s arcade games, and the way Flynn gets sucked into the game is creatively done. But, as a whole, it has not aged well. Now, if it had a good story to make up for its dated CGI, maybe I would be a bit more forgiving. But unfortunately, the film is actually rather boring, and while I can respect it for paving the way for films that use CGI sparingly, ultimately, I don't think it's a particularly good film on its own. It relied too much on the technology, and not enough on the story in my opinion. Safe to say I much prefer the South Park parody. The reason I bring this up is because unlike Tron, Toy Story, for a multitude of reasons, is much more forgivable with its occasional dated animation. I say occasional, because quite a lot of it holds up quite well. Quite a lot of films in the 90s had limitations with what they could and couldn't do with CGI, and so they'd find clever ways to avoid the film looking too dated in years to come, mainly using CGI to aid the film, rather than drape over it. In Toy Story's case, having the first fully computer-animated feature film be primarily about toys was a wise decision, as the plastic textures could stand the test of time a lot better than the then limitations with humans could. The designs of the toys still look pretty good today, and although the designs have obviously improved with each subsequent film, Woody's design in the first film still looks quite similar to his design in the fourth. Even outside of this, a lot of the visuals hold up pretty well. They went the extra mile and included detailed backgrounds, including patterns on the walls, and a rather dark atmosphere to Sid's room, as well as shadows, and even reflections. Damn, that spoon looks good. But does all the animation hold up in this film? No. The humans look pretty weird nowadays. I suppose in Sid's case, it makes him look like a bit more of a threat from the toy's perspective, but then you have Scud, who, as Doug Walker put it, looks like a Dalmatian swallowed Pac-Man. Safe to say that the humans in the subsequent films look much better. Thankfully, however, the humans and Scud take a back seat to the toys, thus allowing the technology to hold up better over time. And also, I can forgive the film's more dated areas of animation, in a way I can't with dated live-action CGI. In a lot of films, CGI is used to make things look like they're really there. In some cases they succeed, such as attempts where they use sparingly, like in Jurassic Park, Forrest Gump or Titanic. But in other cases, yeah, it looks fake as shit, and thus ruins the realistic illusion. In Toy Story's case, and I think you know what I'm going to say, it's not meant to look real. It's entirely animated, and thus, the dated areas of the animation don't stick out as badly as a result. And there are many other reasons why Toy Story holds up today, most notably, the writing. Although Beauty and the Beast was the first animated film to be nominated for Best Picture, it, strangely, failed to pick up a screenplay nomination. There have been rumours that Aladdin was considered, but Ron Williams' frequent improvisation disqualified it. But I doubt that's true, especially given how frequently improvised these Oscar-nominated films were. Despite not picking up a Best Picture nomination, Toy Story did become the first animated film to be nominated for a screenplay Oscar. While it lost to The Usual Suspects, the director of Toy Story and the Best Supporting Actor winner of that film ended up working together on A Bug's Life as a result of the nominations. To cast a predator and be cast by a predator, am I right? Anyway, Toy Story's nomination is certainly warranted. I watched the film multiple times as a kid, and I've watched it at least twice in my adult life, and on these most recent watches, I've noticed new things, mostly good things amidst a few plot holes. It manages to be a film that can appeal to all ages, having a lot of subtle wit and sophistication for adults, but also a simple enough plot and message for children. One thing that really stands out to me is the character arcs of both Woody and Buzz, and how the former's arc represents the film's message. While Woody is certainly a flawed protagonist, and will continue to have flaws throughout the franchise, for one, this is what makes an interesting protagonist, and for two, he manages to be sympathetic in spite of his flaws. From the beginning, we sympathise with Woody because he wants to be there for Andy, and he tries to remind the other toys that the important thing is to be there for him when he needs them, regardless of how much they're played with. He's best friends with Slinky, and in a relationship with Bo, which comes with some subtle horniness.
What do you say I get someone else to watch the sheep tonight?
But, due to being Andy's favourite toy, he has a slight ego, and the point that it's about being there for your kid is put to the test when Andy gets a Buzz Lightyear action figure for his birthday. Woody initially resents Buzz due to the latter replacing him as Andy's favourite toy, but also due to his ego about believing he's a real space ranger. This is honestly really funny, and part of what makes this the funniest of the Toy Story films, and something I'll get to later. Eventually, Woody learns that Andy is allowed to bring one toy to Pizza Planet, and fears that Andy will choose Buzz. He thus devises a plan to get Buzz trapped so that Andy will choose him instead. The situation goes horribly wrong, however, and Buzz ends up getting knocked out the window. This is the point where quite a lot of the toys, especially Mr. Potato Head, turn on Woody, believing he knocked Buzz out the window on purpose. Although Andy comes in before they can attack him, many of the toys still maintain a grudge against Woody, with Mr. Potato Head's Etch-a-Sketch implying he wants to blimmin' hang him, and Slinky and Bo Peep are the only ones who maintain trust in him. Woody and Buzz get left behind, and hitch a ride in a Pizza Planet truck. While there, Buzz sees a giant spaceship, actually a claw machine game, and jumps in, forcing Woody to follow him. They are won by Andy's neighbour Sid, and brought back with him. Following this, Woody tries to find his way home, while Buzz sees a commercial for Buzz Lightyear action figures, and realises he's just a toy. As a kid, I thought, aw, poor Buzz. As an adult, I thought, this guy just realised everything he believed was a lie. It definitely hits much harder in adulthood. As he mopes on the staircase, the camera pulls back, further emphasising that he's not a real human-sized space ranger, but rather an action figure. Wanting to see a slight chance that he's real, he climbs to the top of the staircase and tries to fly out the window, but quickly falls and, literally, breaks his arm. Childhood is believing his expression is fear from falling to the ground. Adulthood is realising his expression is the final nail in the coffin that he's not real. This does come with funny moments which I will get to, but it does have a lot of drama in Buzz becoming demotivated. Although Woody fails to get back to Andy's toys, with a misunderstanding turning them all against him, he tries to save Buzz when he believes Sid's toys are trying to eat him, but in actuality, they fixed his broken arm. This comes with an additional message about not judging based on appearances. Sid's toys may look scary, but they're actually nice, and willing to help Woody and Buzz get back to Andy, while subsequent seemingly nice toys will prove to be the opposite. After Sid straps Buzz to a dangerous rocket, intending to blow him up, Woody tells him about how being a toy is a lot better than being a space ranger, and that he has so many features that make him an awesome toy. While Woody himself becomes despondent, and believes there's no chance of escape, Buzz sets Woody free, but before they can escape, Sid takes Buzz outside to blow him up. Woody rounds up Sid's toys to help him save Buzz, and the two make their way back to Andy. This comes with an additional symbol of character development for Woody, and how he went from using RC to try and get Buzz trapped, to using him to save Buzz from Scud. Woody comes to realise that it's not about being the favourite, while Buzz comes to realise that being a space toy loved by a kid may be even better than being a real space ranger. They help each other reach their respective arcs, which makes the friendship that develops between them more believable. Something I find intriguing about this film, from a thematic point of view, is how Woody is a cowboy doll, and Buzz is a space ranger action figure. For a while, Western-themed toys were what kids enjoyed playing with, but after Sputnik, children became more interested in space toys. This is expanded on, and even more crucial narratively as well as thematically in Toy Story 2. But here, it's showcased in a subtle way through Andy taking more interest in Buzz. I also think Sid is a well-written antagonist. He's probably the closest thing this film has to a villain, except maybe Scud. But, apart from bullying his sister Hannah, he's just having fun with toys, albeit in a rather messed up way. Although, upon my most recent rewatch for this video, it's pretty easy to see why he's so messed up. Sid and Hannah live in a household with neglectful parents. There are various implications, but also clear signs. Such examples include Sid's parents letting him play with explosives, making him skateboard home from Pizza Planet late at night, not intervening when he destroys Hannah's toys, and not even giving him any bedding. Christ, these parents make Horrid Henry's parents look like saints. There are also implications of physical abuse, including how Sid has multiple locks on his door, most likely to protect himself, and his dad's only appearance being asleep in a chair with a load of beer cans, strongly implying he's an alcoholic child abuser. Holy shit, Sid and Hannah need foster parents. But on a lighter note, I stated earlier that Toy Story is the funniest film of the franchise, and I think a lot of this comes down to comedic timing, but also the line delivery, particularly with Tim Allen, Don Rickles, and of course, Tom Hanks.
You are a toy! You are a child's plaything!
I would pay to see the behind the scenes footage of Tom Hanks recording that. Buzz thinking he's a real space ranger is also quite funny. I like how he has an elaborate story about where he's from, while the others have brief statements.
Oh, really? I'm from Play School. And I'm from Mattel.
I also love Woody's snarky remarks to and about Buzz.
T-O-Y. Toy.
Excuse me, I think the word you're searching for is Space Ranger.
The word I'm searching for, I can't say because there's preschool toys present.
I also love the first proper confrontation between Woody and Buzz. Obviously, Buzz thinking he's going to die when Woody opens his helmet is hilarious. But then we get this.
Buzz, look, an alien! Where?
Mr. Potato Head has a lot of great moments as well.
Look, I'm Picasso. I don't get it. You uncultured swine. What are you looking at, you hockey puck? Do we have to hold hands?
If Woody says it's all right, then, well, darn it, it's good enough for me. Woody is...
While Sid is a threat to the safety of toys, Buzz mistaking Scud for him is genuinely hilarious, as is the scene where Woody gets thrown around in the back of the Pizza Planet truck. I mentioned that Buzz becoming despondent over not being real is quite sad, but it also has hysterical moments, mainly when he, quote-unquote, gets drunk on tea.
I am Mrs. Nesbit. Snap out of it, Buzz!
The entire conflict of Woody trying to get the rest of Andy's toys to see Buzz is also brilliant.
Buzz, will you get up here and give me a hand?
Hiya, fellas, to infinity and beyond!
Hey, what are you trying to pull? Nothing.
I also love the entire scene where Woody, along with Sid's toys, come to life in front of him to freak him out. It also has a superbly implemented reference to The Exorcist, which, along with the earlier Alien reference, manages to be funny if you know the reference, but works in the context of the story if you don't. Something else this film utilises is effective foreshadowing. Rewatching Hot Fuzz, and observing that film's incredible foreshadowing may have helped a bit, but on my most recent rewatch of Toy Story, I picked up on quite a bit of foreshadowing, and certain plot points and lines coming back into play later on. Rex is initially paranoid about the thought of Andy getting a new dinosaur, due to fear of being replaced, but at the end of the film, he longs for Andy to get a new one.
That way I could play the dominant predator.
Mr. Potato Head longs for Andy to get a Mrs. Potato Head, then Molly gets one for Christmas. I sincerely hope she's no longer Princess Drool at this point. Plus, him, quote-unquote, shaving is brilliant.
It's a board game! Repeat, battleship!
Lighting it! Mom, have you seen my Sally doll? What's wrong, Sid? Do you want to play with Sally?
And then there's the one we all remember.
That wasn't flying, that was falling with style.
This isn't flying, this is falling with style.
So, in regards to writing, Toy Story has great character development, a ton of brilliant humour, some quite gripping drama, and some impressive foreshadowing. But, is the script perfect? By no means. The film does have a few plot holes, some more major than others. The main one, and I think a lot of people have noticed this one, is Buzz acting like a toy in front of Andy. Even though at this point, he believed he was a space ranger. You'd also think, with him being sold in bulk at Andy's toy barn,
No, that's... Ow, you idiot.
that he would see the other Buzz Lightyears and realise he wasn't unique. Another one, and this is the problem I have with every Toy Story film, is how the toys are able to keep their sentience a secret when they run around in public so often. In this case, the climax where Woody and Buzz try to catch up to the moving van. You'd think with the amount of cars and houses they pass, at least some people would notice. Some smaller ones include Sarge's plastic binoculars somehow operating like real ones, Andy changing the photos on his wall, and getting Buzz Lightyear bedding, even though they're moving within about a week. Sid getting multiple prizes from just 2 quarters on the claw machine, Woody hiding from a sleeping Scud, even though Scud didn't hear him running downstairs, Woody and Buzz not even trying to catch up to Andy's mum's car, but catching up to the moving van perfectly fine, and Woody getting kiss marks from his mistletoe kiss with Bo Peep. This implies that Bo wears lipstick. This aside though, Toy Story is brilliantly written, and it also has a brilliant score. If there's one thing everyone remembers about Toy Story, it's the song You've Got a Friend in Me. It plays in every Toy Story film, and manages to be quite a touching song about friendship that can be used in many different contexts. It's used quite effectively in the opening credits of this film, showcasing the bond between a boy named Andy and his favourite toy Woody. There's also a wholesome version in the ending credits, sung by Randy Newman and Lyle Lovett. Randy Newman's other songs are Strange Things, which is a great song that moves the story forward, as everyone, especially Andy, gives more attention to Buzz, much to Woody's annoyance. And I Will Go Sailing No More is a devastating song, showing Buzz's despondence over being a toy, then trying to prove he can fly, only to fall. And the last lyrics of the song? Being the final nail in the coffin. The film also has a great instrumental score. It mostly has quite an upbeat and whimsical tone to it, but can also be a lot quieter and downbeat when the scene calls for it. The moment where the music is at its best for me, and undoubtedly where everyone remembers it the most, is the entire moving van chase in the climax, where it adds to the fun and enjoyment of Woody and Buzz chasing the moving van, Slinky trying to pull them in, and Woody and Buzz taking to the sky, probably the most nostalgic moment and music in the film, before landing in the family car. It might be slightly tragic to some that Pocahontas won more Oscars than Toy Story, but it is reassuring that the much superior film got the screenplay nomination. And I think Newman's nominations for his musical contributions were warranted. Just as great as it is groundbreaking, Toy Story is understandably one of the most acclaimed films and franchises ever made. I'd say you should watch it, but if you haven't, you must be living under a rock. It's not 100% timeless, but it's definitely aged well enough that it can still be enjoyed 30 years later.